it a little further. There's a case that I think we're all familiar with, Okujetu Ablakwa number 2, and Attorney General Bechebi Lamte number 2, 2012 Supreme Court report 2 at page 845. And just for the purposes of this, let me just quote. And this was J.S.C. Bobe. The complaint of conflict of interest made by the plaintiffs against public officers or the officials of the Lands Commission and those of the Ministry of Water Resources, Works and Housing would be dismissed because specific remedy had been provided under Article 287 of the 1992 Constitution, which required complaints of conflict of interest against public officers to be exclusively investigated by the Commissioner for Human Rights and Administrative Justice, and in the case of a complaint against the Commissioner for Human Rights and Administrative Justice by the Chief Justice.
This was what we reported. In line with GNPC's strategy to increase its stake in viable oil blocks, the corporation acquired a 7% interest from Occidental Petroleum and a Dalco WCTP company in respect of the company's Deepwater Tunnel West Cape 3-point assets for 119 million United States dollars, effective 1st April 2021. JOHL made its first lifting, 944,164 barrels of oil on the Jubilee field in the first half of 2022. Mr. Chairman, an amount of 100,748,907.95 million United States dollars, which was reported realized from the lifting, was not paid into a petroleum holding fund as required by law. We wrote to the GRA, both the GRA and the Ministry for Finance, for responses on this issue. Mr. Chairman, in his written response to PIAC on the matter, the Ghana Revenue Authority referred the committee to the Ministry of Finance, indicating that the ministry was exclusively in charge of the transaction. And the Ministry of Finance, in turn, referred the committee to the Ghana Revenue Authority for answers.
The Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, GNPC, also appeared before the committee and disagreed with PIAC on the assertion. GNPC says Jubilee Holdings is a company on its own and could not transfer all of its profit into the Petroleum Holding Fund.
We disagree with PIAC's assertion that it should have been paid to.
So why? Can you explain to the committee why you disagree?
Yes, so Honorable Chair, as it was discussed during the PIAC testimony or submission, JOHL is 100% subsidiary of GNPC. We believe it's a company incorporated. It's a company registered under the Company Act, and obviously the terms and conditions, the constitution of JOHL is governed by the Company Act, and for that reason, 100% of the revenue cannot be paid into the Petroleum Holding Fund. The company must operate, and if at the end of the day it declares profit and the directors decide that dividend must be paid, that money is paid to GNPC, and that money paid, of course, will be paid into the Petroleum Holding Fund. So we believe that JOHL is governed by the Company Act, not by the Petroleum Revenue Management Act.
All right, so you heard the GNPC Deputy Chief Executive explaining matters on the said amount of money paid into another company. We call it a subsidiary, the JOHL, Jubilee Oil Holding Company Limited, which is an offshore company. That was a major issue that was looked at. But for some reason, the committee agreed that Kenufurata did not have to speak to that because they were satisfied with the explanation given by PIAC and then the GNPC. In essence, Ken Ofori-Atta did not have anything to do with the transfer of that money. Many have disagreed, but that was a position of the committee. And indeed, the committee is a majority committee, 4-4. So if the two of them agree, then there should be some element of cooperation in that. All right, so Ken Ofori-Atta had his day. The proponents had their day. There were other people like PIAC and GNPC who also had their day. The man himself, on whom the allegations or the grounds had been set for his removal, had his day yesterday. So let's hear him.
The 8-member ad hoc committee probing a censure motion against the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, struck out 2 of the grounds for the motion against the minister. These are the ones that hinged on conflict of interest and illegal payments of oil revenues into offshore accounts. The Finance Minister reacted to the other 5 allegations when he appeared before the 8-member Committee of Parliament. He first apologized for the current economic hardship.
Since the Akufo-Addo government came into office in 2017, everything we have sought to do was aimed at making the lives of the people better. We have been focused on this vision to improve lives, and in the first 4 years, our efforts were leading to a realization of the vision. Today, I acknowledge our economy is facing difficulties, and the people of Ghana are enduring hardships. As a person President Akufo-Addo has put in charge of this economy, I feel the pain personally, professionally, and in my soul. I see and feel the terrible impact of rising prices of goods and services on the lives and livelihoods of ordinary Ghanaians. I feel the stress of running a business, but it is the strength and perseverance of the Ghanaian people that inspire me and my colleagues in government every morning. And it's to press on. That is what gives me the strength to press on, to find solutions and relief for Ghanaians to the myriad of problems that our country and the rest of the world are facing, especially since March 2020. Co-chairs, let me use this opportunity to say to the Ghanaian people what I believe, with courage, every finance minister around the world may wish to say to their people now. I am truly sorry.
The minister says payments made for the National Cathedral were legally made from the contingency vote.
Honorable co-chairs, 3 days ago, when the proponents were here, they alleged I had made payments from the contingency fund to support the National Cathedral. I want to state that this is just not true. Let me be categorical. I have taken no money from the contingency fund to make payments for the National Cathedral. It appears the proponents have confused the contingency fund with the contingency vote. Let me explain. There is a difference between contingency fund and contingency vote. The contingency fund the proponents refer to is what is covered under the Constitution, specifically under Article 177. This constitutes money voted by Parliament, and advances from this must be authorized by the Parliamentary Finance Committee. The contingency vote, on the other hand, is a line under the other government obligations vote, which is approved by the Finance Committee and passed as part of the Annual Appropriation Acts passed by Parliament. Honorable co-chairs, in preparing the annual budgets, the practice is that provision is made for indicative expenditures that have not been fully costed at the time of the budget presentation. Provisions are made in the contingency vote to cater for such expenditures. For example, in 2014, there was no specific allocation in the 2014 budget for Ghana's participation in the FIFA World Cup in Brazil. The cabinet of President John Mahama in March 2014 at the time approved then some $9.622 million for that tournament, including that amount which was flown to Brazil in a private jet for the players. A more current example is Ghana's participation in Qatar. The Black Stars qualified for the 2022 FIFA World Cup, way after the 2022 budget presented on 16 November 2021 was approved by Parliament. No specific amount was thus budgeted for it, but through the contingency vote, we have been able to provide funds legitimately for the team to participate in the competition. In conclusion, co-chairs, all the payments made for the National Cathedral were lawfully done, and from the contingency vote under the other government obligations vote, and not from the contingency fund, as alleged by the proponents.
The minister also defended himself against allegations of deliberate and dishonest reports of economic data to Parliament, gross mismanagement of the economy, and financial recklessness leading to the collapse of the Ghana cedi.
The issue of deliberate misreporting of economic data to Parliament is not just unfortunate, but simply untrue. I, and for that matter, the Ministry of Finance, have never misreported data to Parliament as has been alleged. On Tuesday, 13th November 2022, the proponents clarified that their concerns relating to the reporting of fiscal data. In their submission, they alleged that different sets of data were presented to the IMF and the people of Ghana. That is untrue. The 2019 Article 4, which they cited, actually clearly demonstrates that the computing and reporting of the deficit is consistent between the government and the IMF, as shown on the table labeled Ghana Selected Economic and Financial Indicators, 2017 to 2024, on page 4 of the IMF Article 4 and Appendix 3A of the 2019 budget. I want to state that I have not been reckless in the management of the fiscal operations of government. Rather, our strenuous efforts to protect the public purse is what has helped this government to have achieved much, much more than any government ever over a similar period in virtually all sectors. Honorable co-chairs, I've come to Parliament House 10 times, 11 times since this government in the last 6 years to present the annual and mid-year budgets. On all occasions, I have discussed all proposed fiscal operations of government, revenue, expenditure, and financing. On all these occasions, I receive approval as Parliament subsequently passed appropriation bills for all those budgets. Every key expenditure made has been supported by this House. Indeed, we also saw that there are consequences when the House for months refused to pass a major revenue generation item introduced by this government to support the fiscal stability of the economy. It is important at this point to also highlight that the key component of the national debt stock related to 3 exceptional expenditure items that are neither external nor a creation of this government. Energy sector excess capacity payments, 17 billion, which relates to a legacy of take-or-pay contracts that saddle the country's economy with annual payments in excess capacity charges of close to $1 billion. Direct COVID-19 expenditure amounted to Ghana cedis 12 billion, the banking sector cleanup of 25 billion. These 3 items alone contribute to about 23% of our annual debt servicing costs. These 3 items were not created from the recklessness of our party. The long dooms that Ghanaians endured during the NDC administration between 2012 and 2016 was more to do with NDC's government ability to pay for power. So, co-chairs, I find it curious that Honorable Atto-Forson would choose to cite energy bills as an example of the recklessness that the minority charges me with and seek my removal by censure.
He announced a post-COVID recovery policy aimed at sustaining the economy.
Honorable co-chairs, even in these challenging times, we have not been rudderless. We have prepared the post-COVID-19 Program for Economic Growth, PCPEG, as a domestic blueprint which has benefited from input from all key stakeholders, including civil society, social partners, labor unions, employers, and faith-based organizations, academia, industry professionals, and the leadership of Parliament. This document contains a set of time-bound structural reforms and fiscal consolidation measures to place our debt levels and fiscal accounts on a sustainable path over the medium term, and has underpinned government's engagement with the IMF. The negotiation with the IMF is progressing steadily and well, and we are working assiduously to achieve a staff-level agreement by end of December 2022.
Well, so that was Ken Ofori-Atta. You're welcome back to the big issue. My guests, once again, Franklin Cudjoe, President Imani Africa, Alassane Suhuyini, Honorable MP for Tamale North, Honorable or former Honorable, once an Honorable, always an Honorable, Daniel Titus Glover, former MP Tema East, Dr. Theo Champon, economist, Dr. Steve Mantia, Chairman of the Ghana Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative and a former member of PIAC. PIAC is the Public Interest and Accountability Committee. That is an important committee established by law to track and deal with finances or money accruing from Ghana's oil finds. So it's a very, very important committee, and the work they do is highly recognized. So we'll get to that. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mrs. Glover, it's been a long, long, long while. I guess you've been fine. Life after Parliament, how's that been?
It's been fine. It's been on and off. And like you said, it's been ages since I came here. The good old days, we used to be in the old building.
Yes, yes.
And thankfully, let me say that I'm impressed by what I'm seeing. Now we move into a new building. It tells me that some means the management and the entire staff of your board have really been doing so well. So let me commend you.
Thank you.
And welcome home.
Yes, yes,
And
yes. You're welcome home. And we hope you have come to stay.
Oh, definitely. It will depend as and when I'm invited to come and contribute. Yes. So I salute you all.
Thank you. So, Honorable, you also welcome. You were in COP27. A lot of things have happened there. What really is your general impression? Is it, are the targets realistic? What's Ghana's own contribution to that? Ghana, our minister, together with John Kerry, are chairing a committee and all of that. That is quite commendable that Ghana has been appointed to chair a committee and all of that. How was Ghana's representation, and what did we take out from the COP27?
Well, thank you, Solomon. Good morning to you. Good morning to our viewers, especially the good people of the Tamale North constituency and my brother Titus. We're just discussing of how sometimes we miss him, in the cafeteria and other places where we used to hang out in Parliament, especially on the appointments committee. Wish you the very best of luck, even as I don't want you to take back that seat. Yeah, but yes, I was in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, and I think it's has been generally a very good conference. Yesterday I was picking up information that it has had to even be extended by 2 more days. So many delegates are still there. These are the final, days in negotiations, and it is quite important to institutions and countries to put their best foot forward to see how much they can get from funds that have been established to support climate change programs. Generally, I will say the Ghanaian team look very organized and prepared. Not many countries tend to have stands. Ghana had a stand, and it didn't just serve. The Ghanaian purpose. You had other African countries even using it to conduct their meetings and all of that, and I think that's generally commendable. I also think that there are more questions to ask about how we have even utilized the little that we have gotten. For example, I do know that in the last 6 years or so, we have made about $1.3 billion from climate change, negotiations. But the question you will ask yourself is, how have we deployed such monies to the protection of our environment, especially as we are currently engaged with the environmental crisis that we are having to deal with as a country. I say that we are not just battling an economic crisis.
Some of that money being used in renewable energy resourcing. So maybe solar, we see government these days is doing quite a number of.
So to what extent? I'm talking about 1.3 billion, not million. Dollars, not Ghana cedis. So shouldn't we be seeing more of the solar and investments in renewable energy as it is expected? So that's why I'm saying that it may be useful to ask some critical questions about how we are utilizing these funds that are coming, even as we criticize international agencies and international, the North American and South American countries and Europe in general for their lackadaisical approach towards the pledges, towards redeeming the pledges that they make in terms of the contributions that they have pledged to make to support, vulnerable countries like us. As we demand that they do more, it is important that we question ourselves how we are utilizing the little that even comes our way. The other discussion that I think is quite useful is the call by the President for us to begin to discuss how we can, for example, swap our debts with, climate interventions. It's a good call, but there again, typical me, I want us to also look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves the critical question of why we are in this unending debt cycle. Only a few years ago, Africa, championed the HIPC, debt initiative, which saw the cancellation of our debts. And in less than a decade or about a decade, if we are already, if we are beginning again to ask for debt swap and debt, cancellation and forgiveness, it is imperative that we look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves the hard questions about why and how we seem to be in this unending debt cycle. So I like that conversation of debt swap, but I think it should also be linked with the critical questions of how we pile up this unsustainable debts.
Very, very useful. I'm tempted to go into that, ask about reparations and all of that, discussions about that, but that's not the forum for that. Maybe we'll have to deal with that maybe later. So yes, the Speaker of Parliament referred to an ad hoc committee, the motion on vote of censure of Ken Ofori-Atta, reason being that Ken Ofori-Atta should be given a hearing, and of course he could be heard on the floor of Parliament, but if he decided to go with council, which he did, council could not be heard on the floor of Parliament. And so in the wisdom of the Speaker, which the minority disagreed with vehemently, the ad hoc committee was formed, and so which started sitting publicly on Tuesday. Proponents appeared, laid out their claim, defended their grounds, supplied evidence. Other institutions were called, institutions of interest, PIAC, GNPC. They also came to say what they had to say. And then Ken Ofori-Atta, the man in the middle or the center of it all, came to have his say yesterday. All right. To start off with you, Honorable Titus Glover, you've been out of Parliament, so you watched it, with a different, perhaps you watched it like us, but with more experience because you would have understood the workings of the House properly. What would you say would be your general impressions about the conduct of the committee, the members, the co-chair arrangement, and all of that?
Thank you so much, my brother. First of all, let me commend the House, most especially the Right Honourable Speaker. That when you go into the articulated 2 that talks about the censorship, where the minister will have the opportunity to defend himself at the plenary. When you go to, is it 103 of the standing orders? It says that the standing order says that the Speaker can refer to a committee so that he can have the opportunity to come with anybody who can aid him. And I think that we need to commend the House and the Speaker for what they have done. Let me also commend the committee members. The composition itself is a par 4-4. And you could see that the issues that they are raising from both sides trying to make sure that the focus, the purpose for which the referral was made to that committee is in line. Then comes to the issue of the proponents. I never had opportunity to sit to listen and watch through.
Just a whole day thing.
Once a while, I go through my phone, I watch bits and pieces of it. Then the arguments that the proponents were adducing for the censorship were strongly and forcefully made. I didn't watch the PIAC and the GNPC until you show it now. Then the minister himself, his composure and his eloquence in responding to all the charges against him. For me, he did explain himself. But as to what the public sees and the reports that will be generated for the committee, for the plenary to discuss, is another matter. So until we delve deep into every area, we are aware that the committee in their own wisdom said that they want him not to respond to the conflict of interest issue that was raised earlier by his counsel, Gabi, pointing attention to Article 287 of the Constitution, and the fact that there have been earlier case between Broja Jemfi against Mr. Furiata at Strash that even went to the Supreme Court and the determination was made on it. So if you are asking him or you are charging on conflict of interest, it's going to say the lawyers call it double jeopardy or something. So there's a need for them to not to respond at all to that accusation. Then they also told him not to respond to the PIAC.
The one about illegal payment of oil revenue, offshore accounts.
So then he focused on the issue about the Cathedral, where the proponents were saying that he has taken money from the Contingency fund. And he came back to argue or to defend himself that he never took him any money from the Contingency fund, but rather it is a contingency vote. And he did explain himself that both the Contingency fund and the contingency votes have authorization from the Finance Committee of Parliament, but on the votes, it forms part of the appropriation that Parliament in total approves for him to spend. He went on to argue or to say that there are certain costs that you can't immediately quantify them immediately, but you make some provision within the appropriation so that when any line item or any cost is necessary, you just fall into the contingency vote and make sure you make some money available. I made example of the two World Cup, the 2024 World Cup, Anajo Mama, and the current one that is being to really state his case.
So once you are there, let's stay on that ground. That's like ground 3. That's ground 3 actually. Illegal payment of oil revenues into offshore accounts in flagrant. That's Cathedral. I beg your pardon. That's ground discovered interest in the constitutional withdrawal. So deliberate and dishonest, alarming incompetence. Which of the grounds is that? All right. So the grounds on the National Cathedral, really, the fact that he took money that had not been approved by Parliament for that. Of course, he did give an explanation, but also such a colossal project. Do you put that under other government obligations? What's the point? Sometimes when you build a 3-unit classroom block, just a small school, we account for it, and it's quite obvious how money was taken and spent on that. Very obvious for anybody to see. Why should we put, a huge thing at the National Cathedral, estimated to be costing around $400 million, under other government obligation? Doesn't that, show that we are trying to hide something somewhere for whatever reason? Why couldn't we be clearer that we are voting this amount of money for the National Cathedral? Why did we have to put another government obligation? That's quite curious.
On the contrary, I'm not sure the finance minister or government want to hide the expenditure on National Cathedral, because he did say, after all, if the money is spent, you have to account for it. Do you understand? And the whole project is in phases. So at the time that he did mention, I think, was it the 2019 budget or so, he made mention of government contribution to the National Cathedral, i.e., the acquisition of land, the secretariat, and the seed money. to roll over the National Cathedral. It has been stated there. It forms part of the museum's monument.
But we never knew how much.
So what I'm saying is that in quantum we heard is around $400 million.
Yes, that's speculative.
You know,
that's speculative.
So that is why he explained himself that because you don't know the exact amount that's going to be involved, that you make provision in the contingency vote.
But Honorable Tasuluba, we do projects in this country. We've built interchanges. We've done projects. There's always an estimated value that this interchange is going to cost X amount. We all know that in the course of the delivery of the project, things could change. You could come back for additional funding. Why is this National Cathedral different? And you see, it's disappointing because this is a house we're building for God, and to make it, you know, generate so much controversy, I'm not sure it's very nice. Huge project, interchange. It is even more expensive than a lot of the interchanges we are building, and we decide to put it under other government obligations, and we don't even know how much it costs. No matter how you look at how the explanation he gave is, I think there's a key matter he must explain why that was not captured, you know, quite obviously in the budget.
That was why he appeared before the committee. And he has explained himself. If the committee thinks otherwise, it should be captured in their report, because he has explained himself.
But are you satisfied with the explanation he gave?
Well,
as a
I'm
Ghanaian
satisfied.
And as a taxpayer?
I'm satisfied because
you are satisfied with the
there have
explanation.
been examples of these World Cup that we are.
But you can't compare.
No. Don't say.
Quantum.
Every expenditure is money that is being spent. Whether it is 1 penny or 1 peswa, is an expenditure being spent. Do you understand? So long as that money can be accounted for, because he's been accused that he has taken for the contingency vote, and he said no. Is part of the appropriation, and this is where we took it from, because we don't know exactly the quantum is going to look like. So clearly, I have not taken money from the fund.
I don't even buy that.
Do you understand?
You don't know
that
how
is
much
you,
it's going to cost.
But he has explained himself for you to know that I have not taken money from the fund, but in the vote that forms part of the appropriation. So asking me this question, I feel that yes, we listen to him, we watched him. You are not comfortable. Members of the committee listened to him well. They probed him. They asked him questions. And he also provided answers. As to what report they are going to generate for the plenary for discussion, that is another matter.
Very well. So, Honorable Sweeney, of course, you are free to state your impressions of the committee, etc. But we are delving into the matters, I mean, quite straightforward. The cathedral and how he responded to it. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, I am just wondering, I'm sure like many other Ghanaians, how this battle by the finance minister to stay in office at all cost against public, perception would have been if he was receiving salary and if he was benefiting, serving the state. Because his admirers in the past have talked about how he is making a sacrifice for the state, even to the point that he is not taking salary. And so it is just out of the goodness of his heart that he is serving this nation as finance minister. So I'm wondering how this battle to keep staying in office against the wishes of the people that he claims to be serving would have been if he was personally benefiting, because he claims he's not personally benefiting, and that is said as tongue-in-cheek.
No, but he's been appointed by somebody in whom you have reposed executive power, the president. He has the confidence of the president. The president thinks he's doing a great job. He's taken us from a place. He's gotten to a point he was doing what we hear. And indeed, the figures point north. And we had a difficulty with global economy, global health crisis, and now the economy is struggling, not just Ghana. So he's done it before, and he's driving us out of the difficulty the world system has placed us into. Will it be fair to say he should leave?
I completely disagree with you when you suggest that he's driving out of the difficulty. In fact, he has driven us into a ditch as a state. And that is why,
notwithstanding the global issues.
And that is why I will address that. That is why, for me, I agree with you when you say that the president exercises executive authority, and it is through that authority that he appoints him. But what should not be lost on us also is the fact that that executive authority is exercised on behalf of the people of Ghana. And the people of Ghana generally, conduct any survey, are saying that we don't want you. That's what the people of Ghana are saying. The only people, as things stand now, who want him to be there are his family members and the president. It is clear. Not even his party wants him there. That is why the majority members of Parliament have called a press conference not only to ask for his removal, but have called a second one to say they will boycott him if he comes to present the budget. So if you are exercising executive authority on behalf of the people of Ghana, and the people of Ghana are saying that we don't want you, and you claim that you are serving us from the goodness of your heart, and that you are not even benefiting from it, and we say go, why is it difficult for you to go?
Because the president wants him to stay.
But the president is not the state.
Yes, but the president, if we're unhappy with all the president is doing, we have an opportunity to deal with that.
I don't want us to
have an opportunity to deal with that. I want to go to the polls.
But the point I'm making is that I just wonder how this battle would have been if he was benefiting, assuming he's not. Now, he started his presentation when he appeared before the committee, and maybe I must also commend the speaker and members of the committee for the great job that they have done. For me, I've always said that this parliament affords us an opportunity to strengthen our democracy, because we may never have this again in our lifetime.
In a long time,
What can possibly happen again is the party in government having minority. In parliament. But I don't see us having this equal numbers in parliament in our lifetime again. I mean, anything can happen, but I don't foresee it in the near future. So when you have the power balance the way it is an opportunity to strengthen our democratic credentials, because you come to the negotiating table as equals. And through that, you can take long-lasting and impactful decisions that will cater for the imbalances that will occur in future. That is, whether the overwhelming majority or overwhelming minority. I mean, so I think that the speaker deserves commendation for allowing this process to go through.
Being a key player and a vocal one in this parliament that you so described, what will be what scorecard or verdict will you return so far on the conduct and performance of this hung parliament? Do you think the people of Ghana have been impressed by the way you guys have conducted yourself generally?
It's an interesting discussion. It's an interesting topic. But Salam, I will not be tempted to go into that. To have that conversation. I was just curious about what you thought about. Because that conversation can take the whole time that you have given me to address the matter on the table. So I'll not be tempted to go into it. But I am saying that it affords us an opportunity to strengthen our democratic institutions and to improve our democratic credentials. And one of the ways is what is currently happening. The fact that we have never gone through this path where a minister of state is to be censured. The opportunity is given that minister to appear before a committee with counsel and to be heard before the debate continues and possibly a vote is taken on him. I think it is commendable, and the members on the committee, many of them, not all of them, so far have done some fantastic job, and they have to be commended. And when you zero in on the man, in the center of the storm, Ken Oforiatta, he opened his presentation with an apology. He said, "I'm sorry." Then I kept listening till the end, and he ended by saying, "I've done nothing wrong."
Yes, I can apologize on behalf of a lot of things that have happened, but it doesn't really mean that it's my fault. If I was doing well, and there are other, we call it exogenous factors, come in that I didn't cause, but because I am there, I'm supposed to take responsibility. It really doesn't mean it's my fault, is it?
I'll tell you why that is hypocritical. And that is in line with the belief by many in this government that many of our problems can be solved using PR. if it is not PR, then it is throwing money at problems.
Throwing money
and
at
you
problems.
can see it across board. Because clearly, if you have done nothing wrong, I don't see why you begin with an apology. When you apologize, I expect that along the line, you will at least admit to certain things that could have been done better. But when throughout, after the apology, you justify every single thing, and then you blame it on others and other factors, then what is the use of the apology? So for me, it is only when you think that this is a communication problem that you will engage in such semantics. The point is, the committee, again, like Dr. Ayene stressed, did not strike out the two grounds as reported by the media. They did not strike out the two grounds. They simply came to the conclusion that they have had enough information on it to take a decision. So let's all be patient and wait for the decision. But to run and create an impression as if those two grounds have been struck out for lack of evidence, it's just also in line with my earlier conviction that people in government think that this is a communication problem. Because clearly, the first one on conflict of interest, it's a controversial matter. Yes, Gabi Ochiridaku raised
We'll come to
issue.
the conflict of interest properly. But for now, I think we're just looking at the cathedral bit because he started from there. So I'm just saying we should tag along with that and deal with the matter of the
that will
cathedral.
interrupt my chain of thoughts. But let me try and reorganize.
If I could help you do that. So the taking of money, which the minority or the proponents say was not accounted for from the state to fund the cathedral, they think that was illegal, that was improper. He came to explain that, not exactly. The money he took was taken from money voted for or under other government obligations. And people have said they find that curious or funny because why don't you, a huge project like that, why don't you put it under, or why don't you give a line item to it so we all see where the money is going?
Fantastic point. I mean, let me just reiterate the point that the two grounds have not been struck out.
Sure.
And that the committee came to the conclusion that they have had enough information to make a decision on it, a decision that will be found in their report. And so let's all be patient and wait for that. Now, the finance minister appears, and on one of the grounds involving withdrawal of funds from, a consolidated fund without approval of Parliament, and suggests to us that the proponents of the motion mistook contingency vote for contingency fund. That, for me, is another mark of dishonesty. And I don't know if you have heard me say this repeatedly on this and other platforms, that the cluelessness and the incompetence of this government does not even annoy me as much as their dishonesty. This is a government that in 2017, 6 years ago, cut short for the construction of a national cathedral. 2018 made it known to all of us that the government was going to provide seed money. The finance minister and the president both spoke in Ghana and in UK that they were going to provide seed money for the cathedral. In 2019 budget statement, read in 2018, the finance minister again tells us the components of the cathedral and what was going into that cathedral, and reveals again or indicates again that the state will be providing seed capital for the project. 3-4 years. And yet that minister comes before this committee and wants us to believe that that money that he advanced to the cathedral came from a contingency vote. Salam, let's look at what contingency votes are supposed to be used for.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting your flow, but just hold it there. I'll take a break. I'll take a break. Come back. I'll give you the time to land. So this is a big issue. We are live on 97.3 City FM. We are discussing the motion on the vote of censure and how the committee, ad hoc committee set up by the president, the Speaker of Parliament, has done its work so far. They were given 7 days. That elapsed yesterday. There are indications that they may seek extension of time to put their reports together. Their report will have to be presented to Mr. Speaker, and then that will be tabled for debate. And after that, there will be a decision made on Ken Ofori-Atta, whether his instrument of appointment will be revoked or he continues to be finance minister. He says that he's not done anything wrong, even though he apologized for the difficulties Ghanaians were going through. So we'll take a break, return, and then continue with our discussion. Don't go away. You're welcome back to The Big Issue. We are live on 97.3 City FM. We are live on Facebook and on City TV as well. The discussion, you can join us via our WhatsApp lines, which is displayed on the screen, 0550585832. We're looking at the motion on the vote of censure, the work of the ad hoc committee set up by the Speaker, concluded their work yesterday, but they may seek extension to put their report together, submit to Speaker, and then we have a debate to decide to determine the fate of Ken Ofori-Atta, Finance Minister. My guest this morning, the Honorable Daniel Titus Glover, Daniel Ni Kwate Titus Glover, former MP, Tema East, Alhassan Suwini, Honorable, Member of Parliament for Tamale North, Franklin Kujo, President Imani Africa, Dr. Theo Champon, Economist, Dr. Steve Mantiel, Chairman of the Ghana Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, and a former member of PIAC, former chairman of PIAC. Alhassan Suwini was making a point on the National Cathedral. I will let him land, then we'll get into other matters. Yes.
So, Salam, the point has to be made that this was a cathedral for which the sword was cut in 2017. 2018, the President, the Finance Minister, both in Ghana and in UK told us that the government will support with seed money, seed capital. 2019 budget, it was captured. Yet he comes to the committee and he wants us to believe that that money that he advanced to the cathedral came from the contingency fund. And the question I want us to answer this morning is, what is the contingency fund? I'll just define it. The contingency fund is used to help the government cope with disasters and other unexpected events that require public money but have not been specifically included in the budget.
But where are you quoting from?
I mean, this is the general definition of contingency funds. It's a general definition of contingency funds. And you can ask anybody. It is used to help government cope with disasters and other unexpected events that require public money but have not been specifically included in the budget. And that is why he was correct when he talked about the Black Stars. Because at the time that the budget was prepared, we were not certain how much we'll be spending on the Black Stars. And that is where governments usually will go to for such unexpected events.
Now he's talking about vote now. The
talking about vote. Yes. It is used interchangeably.
No, his point is that the proponents mistook the vote for the contingency fund, and he explained that the contingency fund, before you spend, you must come back to Parliament.
No, you see, I think that let's get it correct. There's a consolidated fund.
Yes.
From which you have the contingency fund and the contingency vote.
Yes.
And the contingency fund. Yes. The contingency fund is what is approved by Parliament. And if you are going to spend outside of it, you will still need to come back to Parliament. But this particular one, and yesterday I spoke to a former controller, controller, an accountant general, and he explained this to me, that the contingency fund is used to cater for unexpected budgets. They call it above the line items. Above the line items. So, for example, at the beginning of the year, if you awarded a contract, say to do a national cathedral, and you budgeted 100 million Ghana cedis, and you advanced the 100 million Ghana cedis to the contractor, but due to unforeseen circumstances such as we are having today, inflation is 47% that you didn't predict. Exchange rate is out of your hands, and the contractor begins to make claims because the contract sum may have varied. The government falls on such funds. So it is for an emergency, it is for an unexpected project. You don't use that to initiate projects. And so I'm saying that if you cut short for 2017, made it clear in 2018 that you were going to provide seed money for the cathedral. In 2019 budget, it cannot be a contingency.
But I get the point.
And throughout throughout the defense that people have put up for this government in the past, they have always insisted that it was in the budget. It was in the budget. The finance minister spoke about it, and there was a line item. So this afterthought, level of dishonesty cannot be tolerated. I expect that the committee in its report would highlight this.
So are you saying that
even if for nothing at all, Salom, for me, that is evidence of incompetence.
So are you saying
because to know about a project for 3 years and to say that in the 3rd to 4th year you use emergency funds to deal with it, it's some level of incompetence.
Let me get this clarity from you. The finance minister did say that there's a difference between contingency fund and contingency vote. Contingency fund is different. We've all known about that. But he sought to explain that what he used was contingency vote, and the contingency vote is a line item under the other government obligation. And let me read a quote from him. It appears the proponents have confused the contingency fund with contingency vote. Let me explain. There is a difference between contingency fund and contingency vote. The contingency fund the proponents refer to is what is covered under the Constitution, specifically under Article 177. This constitutes money voted by Parliament, and advances from this must be authorized by the Parliamentary Finance Committee. The contingency vote, on the other hand, is a line under, quote, other government obligations, vote which is approved by the Finance Committee and passed as part of the Annual Appropriation Act passed by Parliament. So this is the explanation he's giving. Maybe we'll have to get more clarity on this. But he's seeking to say that the fund is different from the vote. The fund is available. Before you spend from it, you have to go back to the Finance Committee. But in terms of the vote, it is approved as part of appropriation under what he called other government obligations. And so he took it from other government obligations and not the fund specifically. So that takes me to another point.
But because that's the point I'm making to you, that
so you think he misled?
Whatever it is, the money should not be coming from a contingency fund or a contingency vote.
It should have been clearly specified that this money is
because it is not contingency. The seed capital couldn't have been contingency after 4 years. You know the meaning of contingency, right?
Yes.
So it couldn't have been an emergency. And that's why I'm saying, even if we agree with that explanation, for me, it is evidence of his incompetence to have allowed it to become an emergency after planning to execute it for 4 years. That's the point I'm seeking to make. And I'm saying that yes, the contingency votes in the past have always been used to cater for unexpected events. And so it could not have been the case that the finance minister, after telling all of us and after planning for 3-4 years, had to resort to that fund to fund the budget, unless there was an ill motive, unless there's incompetence.
But you suspect ill motive?
Of course. I mean,
ill motive, which should be
lack of transparency. Because once you put it under that fund, that is what he's now using as his defense. So you want to spend it at will. And you see, if we do not watch that and correct it and allow it as something that is normal and should be continued, you never know what other finance ministers will do with that.
So fortunately,
and that's for me,
I think the correction
is the way we must approach this discussion.
Fortunately, the correction perhaps has been made. He made mention of the Attorney General's opinion on the whole project. And per that Attorney General's report, it became clear that it is a state asset and it's a state company, a company limited by guarantee. It's something that is a state property. Contrary to what we've heard many times at the President's Cathedral, Attorney General sought to explain that it cannot be called a President's Cathedral. It is a state cathedral. And so it's a state company. Once a state company, the state has an obligation towards it. So money spent for it should not be described as unconstitutional, etc. Does that, satisfy your call for correction for future finance ministers?
For me, the point is that nobody, denies the fact that it is put up as a state monument. I mean, that's how all national cathedrals are built anyway. They are built for the state. But the point also shouldn't be lost on us that the president has told us that it was a personal pledge that he made to God. He did not do that on behalf of the people of Ghana. He did that as a personal pledge to God. So it is unfortunate, but he has the executive authority to do so, that he's not using his personal funds to do it, but he is using state funds to satisfy a personal pledge that he made to God. And that again must prick our conscience as a people. Do we want people aspiring to be presidents to make personal pledges to God or the shrines that they worship, so that when they become people clothed with executive authority, they can spend on our behalf to, meet those personal pledges that they made with their shrines? Does that sit well with our conscience?
Everything starts with a personal. I'll come to you.
But you see,
everything comes with a personal pledge.
You see, perhaps when personal pledges that are voted for are put in the manifesto of parties. Personal pledges that are voted for are put in the manifesto of parties.
But not everything is put in the manifesto.
So that the citizens can look at those manifestos and determine whether they want it or not.
Very well. So I'm just told that the Defense Minister, the Dominic Nitu, Honorable, has called into the program. He has one or two things to say. Honorable Defense Minister, welcome to the program. I hope we've not breached any security or defense protocol. Hello, Honorable Nitu. Well, it doesn't appear we have him. We'll get to him. Okay, so yes, I'll go to Franklin, and then we'll deal with Dr. Mansia on the PIAC matters.
I think that Sweeney need to be a bit careful with some choice of words, dishonesty, incompetence.
No, but that's what is in the grounds.
With those words?
No, it's in the grounds.
In fact, the minister himself did mention some of these words that was used to describe him.
But we described Mahama in similar ways, and it was fine.
Has it become wrong? Please. Yeah.
When the shoes
but I engage him, so same thing I'm doing to you.
And he said his apology is unacceptable because he had demonstrated dishonesty at the tail end of his response to the accusations against him. And the fact that the government is using PR and money. Where is this proof from? You have accused me. Are you saying that I couldn't come and defend myself? All the recriminations that you level against me, I should come and clap and say, hallelujah, it's okay, go away with it. I need to justify and explain myself. And he said, look, we have two funds, the contingency fund and the contingency vote. And you said I took money from the fund, and I said, no, it was at a part of the appropriation. And he said, what? You have headache?
No, but Honorable, you
clearly,
yes, but
I don't get the minority and the position of Sweeney here.
Hold your horses. Your colleague, the minister, is on. Hello, Dr. Nitu, Honorable. Thanks for joining the program. We understand you have an intervention to make.
Yes, good morning, and good morning to all your cherished listeners. Good morning to my two colleagues over there. I believe I heard Suhini and Titus Glover and Dr. Mansia. But whatever the case, just some 1 minute interjection, and sorry for that. The minister was brought in to Parliament for 7 charges. Serious charges, 7 of them. 2 of them, the committee accepted. They will not ask him to respond for various reasons. But I'm talking specifically about the funding of the cathedral. His charge was very simple, that he took money unconstitutionally to help in the building of that particular cathedral. And I think that is the minister answer to. That if I were to take money from the consolidated contingency fund that recourse to the Finance Committee of Parliament, then I'm violating the Constitution. That is not what I did. I took money from the contingency vote. Contingency vote under other government obligations. So exactly what we should be talking about. If we are talking about whether it was hidden or not hidden, that is not the charge. It doesn't make it unconstitutional. It doesn't make it a ground for which the minister should be sanctioned. And I thought that whatever we are discussing now with regards to the censure, we should look at the 7 charges, look at the minister's answers, and find out whether those answers that he gave satisfied what the committee was looking for, or whether there are grounds for censure. Because it was very, very clear. You step constitutionally into the cathedral. If I take money legally and constitutionally into the cathedral, and are talking about what was hidden or whether it was a personal, like, that is not the grounds for censure. The grounds for censure is you took money unconstitutionally to fund the cathedral. The minister says no. Whatever resources I took it under the contingency vote, the government obligation, which by law is allowed, because it was done under appropriation. Contingency vote and the other government obligations done under appropriation. So by law, he can spend that money. It's the same money we are currently spending on the Black Stars. Okay, it's the same money we spent for the Black Stars in 2014 in Brazil. And many of the things that the president's pledge, like for example, President Mills going to pledge for Haiti $8 million, is the same money that was being spent. So the question is, did the minister...
But the issue about Haiti and all of that, Haiti, you can say, was an emergency. So, you can make room for that. But many have also said that his explanation that he took the money from the contingency vote was an afterthought. Why will you want to take money for a national cathedral, something we have talked about many years? Why will you want to take it from the contingency vote when you have the opportunity to make it a key item in the budget that will be debated and voted for? Why will you want to do that?
I've heard you. That's a legal. That is a legitimate argument. That's a question we can ask. But for the sake
your concern is about the unconstitutional withdrawal, which forms a ground for the censure.
Remember, yesterday the minister was on serious charges of censure, and what you are asking, whether it really leads to he being censured, is another story. The question is, did he do anything wrong or not? Full stop. And for the issue of whether where he took the money from, where he didn't take the money from, the principal question is, was it legal, was it constitutional, or was not? The others are, I would call them politics and semantics, and people can argue in different forms. They can argue that it was right, I can argue that it was not right. That's my opinion, somebody else's opinion, and I don't want to get involved in that. I just wanted to correct the impression that to say that, look, the money the minister to the ministers, the evidence I took it for the contingency vote under the other government obligations, which are legal. The other two charges, in fact, three other charges were basically seen incompetent.
Very well. I think your point is well made. Just a quick one before you go. What's a general discussion in government? MPP MPs, I'm sure including yourself, you have all said that Ken should go. What is the discussion in general government circles? Are we seeing the back of him after budget? And are you as a majority MP going to be present for him to read the budget?
I have always said one thing, that MPs made a call to the president publicly. We, as some of us, thought that it shouldn't have been done that way. The president should take the financial office. It found favor with majority, not all, but majority of the caucus, and so the caucus adopted it. The question, the president said, look, give me an opportunity to allow my minister to do some three basic things that he's currently on. Read the budget, present the budget, do the appropriation, and the IMF. We in the caucus have acceded to that position of the president. So I think that that's where we stand now. I don't think we should go about discussing other matters, because these three key issues are very central to us as a government and to the nation. Because if we were to fail on any of them, it will have serious repercussions on the lives of our people.
But Honorable, let me ask. So this is outside of the essential matters and all. Why should it be Ken Ofori-Atta? So, for example, we have Charles Edubuahin, a key member of the ministry as well, who have had to leave, quite unplanned because of the analysis expose. This could have happened to anybody. It could have been Ken, God forbid. He would have left. So is it that there's nobody else to do the job, even in the face of this uproar from the people's representative, that the man should leave?
It's like asking me, why is it that Nitiwo is the first minister?
Because I'm speaking to you as a caucus member.
No, it's like asking me, why is Nitiwo the first minister? I don't believe everybody wants me to be the first minister. There's some people, if they'll kick me out. But the president is
the unison, the call appears quite overwhelming. The entire majority caucus now is aligned.
You are still not getting the point I have made. The point I have made to you is that there are two things we should look at. A president makes an appointment, and people have said to the president, we think that get this person to go. The same president has called the caucus and made an appeal to them, and the caucus has listened. I just think that as a country, we should give both parties the opportunity to see how this thing will end. That's all the appeal that I'm making. But I just called it in this case.
That point is well made. The point on the constitutionality, I think, is well made.
And like I said to you, and I'm still repeating, at the end of the day, as a country, and that's why Fish and a few people are beginning to respond. It is something that we should all find a way of bringing down the water. It's not good for us, especially the situation in which we find ourselves. And I'm sure your panelists will look at it from that angle as well. It's not good for us. And we should all find a way of toning down the waters. It will help us ultimately as a country. If a country is going through IMF negotiation, going through all these kind of things, and we have this turmoil, I believe that those who have to make the decisions will make the decisions in the best interest. And I know the president will make whatever decision in the best interest of the country. I know that for a fact.
Very well. Yes, IMF and all of that, hardship, etc., unemployment, people, etc. It's all, they are all national security concerns. Are we in good hands? Security and defense, because a couple of weeks ago we heard former president saying military, they should keep faith, so the constitution runs, etc. Are we in good hands?
We are in good hands.
Very well. Thank you so much.
We are in good hands, but all of us must help to make sure that we continue to be safe. But we are in good hands.
Very well. Thank you so much, the Honorable Dominic Nitu, Member of Parliament and Defense Minister. Thanks so much. Let's quickly...
I maintain that the explanation that money came from the contingency vote is an afterthought. Because after 4 years of telling us how the project will be funded, it could not have been an emergency situation.
Let's go to Dr. Mantel, who has been waiting on the line. My good friend Franklin Kujo is there. He's such a patient young man. Maybe this is not so much a young man, but quite a patient person. Dr. Steve Mantel, welcome to the program. Apologies for keeping you waiting because we know you have some other businesses to attend to. Let's jump straight to the matter of the PIAC and the so-called illegal payment of oil revenues into offshore accounts, which the proponents say is or was in flagrant violation of Article 176, etc., etc. The point is being made that some monies were transferred to JOHL, which should not have been. What really is your take on this?
Right, and thank you very much. And I think I should set the context for this discussion, something that we seem to have overlooked, or perhaps most of us discussing this issue are unaware of. A few years ago, GNPC sold crude oil and deposited the amount in its account and intended to transfer the money subsequently into the Petroleum Holding Fund. This came to the Ministry of Finance's attention, and it directed GNPC to immediately transfer the money into the Petroleum Holding Fund because what it had done was in violation of the PRMA. It is for good reasons that the Petroleum Revenue Management Act directed that all revenues derived from the upstream petroleum activities, either directly, and I emphasize directly or indirectly, so it could be directly derived to accrued to GNPC or by proxy to a subsidiary. All those revenues should go into the Petroleum Holding Fund for proper tracking. And incidentally, I work very closely with the team that developed the PRMA, and so I can speak to the spirit of that provision in the law. We have made mistakes in the mining sector. We mined gold for over 100 years, let's say about 60 years as an independent Ghana. And what became of it? In 2000, we were declared a highly indebted poor country. And we did not want to repeat that mistake. So we wanted proper tracking and proper accounting for our share of benefits from petroleum extraction. Any attempt to circumvent that is unacceptable. And so PIAC, which derives its mandate from the PRMA and is required to ensure strict compliance with the provisions of the Act, found that some lifting in respect of some 7% stake, that the state, let me emphasize, that 7% was not acquired by JOHL. It's an acquisition by the state. And therefore, all payments in respect of that 7% belongs to the state. But GNPC had cleverly directed the money to a company called JOHL and intending to tell us that at the end of the year, JOHL will trade with the money and at the end of the year, pay GNPC dividend. And then GNPC will account for that dividend. That is an attempt to circumvent the law. If you look, I saw Katie Hammond trying to bring in extraneous matters, citing PNDC Law 64. Okay, let's go into PNDC Law 64. It allows GNPC to set up subsidiaries. But it does not say that those subsidiaries should be funded with state money. If you look at Law 64, GNPC's operations are to be exclusively financed with money raised from the capital market. And GNPC is supposed to cover all its costs, pay its salaries, everything, and pay dividends to the state, the same way Graphic and other state entities operate. But somehow, because at the time we discovered oil, GNPC's books could not support any effort at raising money on the capital market, we gave GNPC up to 2026, 15 years, to operate, and then be able to, dress their books to be able to fend for themselves going forward. And so GNPC has repeatedly made the argument that for them to be able to fend for themselves in future, they need revenue recognition in their books. That means when they trade the crude oil, they want the money to first reflect in their books before transferring the money into the Petroleum Holding Fund. This we disallowed in the first instance. So all GNPC is doing is to find a clever way of getting that revenue recognition that it seeks. That's my take on this.
I see. But so the JOHL is still owned by GNPC and by extension still owned by government. Is that not the case, or Ghana?
That is the case.
Yes.
But let me ask you, if you already have at least 2 subsidiaries in the upstream sector, you have Exploco and you have, GOSCO. Why would you create a third one? In fact, even Exploco is not properly capitalized. Exploco does not have office. Exploco does not have offices. GOSCO does not exist. It exists only on paper. They don't have an office. They don't have staff. So why do you create a third one?
Why do you think they created a third one?
They should answer. Initially, when we inquired about this, the response was that it was a temporary measure and that all the 7% stake will be transferred to Exploco. But at this time, it doesn't look like that's the intention. Let them tell us why they behave in this way.
Is it not correct that, part of the acquisition from, because we understand the JOHL originally was or belonged to Anadaco, and in Anadaco transferring some of its shares to us, it came with the JOHL. Is that not correct?
That is not correct.
What is the true position?
Anadaco had a stake, I think about 24% in Jubilee or so. Mm-hmm. And Anadaco decided, in fact, it did not decide, it was Occidental that bought Anadaco. Mm-hmm. And once you buy a company, a whole company, you become a direct owner of all the assets of the company, mm-hmm. be it regardless of what jurisdiction those assets are. So when Occidental acquired Anadaco, it automatically became the owners of Anadaco's stake in Ghana. Now, in their strategic planning, Occidental decided that it was not interested in this African asset, so it wants to offload them, which includes its stake in Ghana. In that process, I think Cosmos filed its right of preemption and wanted to buy. But eventually, following some discussions and all that, Tallow eventually bought the stake. In the negotiations, Ghana expressed interest in acquiring some 7%. And that is from Occidental, which is now the owner of the assets. So Occidental, according to GNPC, JOHL was established by Occidental and not by them. And so if indeed that is correct, then after the conclusion of the transaction, you want to do the proper thing by transferring those shares to your Exploco, which is your commercial vehicle in the upstream sector. But they haven't done that. Again, I find it quite difficult to accept that explanation that Occidental was the entity that set up the company, because that company was established and has 2 directors. That is even questionable. The director, that's the chairman of the board, and former chief executive K.K. Sapon are the only directors of JOHL. That is not proper for corporate governance. Okay? So that aside,
are they still the directors of the company? Are they still the directors? Are they still the directors? Even though they are not at post, even though they are currently not at post, they are still the directors of that company.
I have no evidence that that situation has changed.
I see. All right, so let's just fast track this. So it's clear that from your reading of the law and your understanding of the law, the money shouldn't have gone to the JOHL account. It should have gone to the PHF, the Petroleum Holding Fund. So that clearly is not a good thing. But is that the finance minister's fault? Should he be reprimanded or punished or censored for a thing like this? You did say that the GNPCs always wanted to have revenue recognition, and it was done before. Ministry of Finance, I don't know under which regime, immediately got them to transfer it into the appropriate place when they got to know. Should we blame this on the finance minister and seek to remove him because of this misallocation of funds?
You see, this is where I find the scope of this hearing a bit worrying. It wasn't exhaustive enough because there are elements of breaches that did not appear to have come to attention. The Ministry of Finance has explained that in getting GNPC to acquire the 7%, it loaned some money to GNPC. Question we should be asking is whether that loan was approved by Parliament. At the beginning of the year, GNPC will submit its work program in terms of activities it intends to take and how it wants to finance these. And these are approved, and then the money is provided for GNPC to undertake those activities. At the beginning of the year, I don't think GNPC was aware that an opportunity of this nature, a 7% stake, would have arisen. And so when that came up, the minister felt that we needed to do something about it. He needed to go to Parliament to seek approval to spend state money in supporting GNPC to acquire the 7% stake. I don't have any evidence that the minister ever went to Parliament to seek approval for giving loan to GNPC. Besides that, the ministry is not actually a microfinance or a bank to be giving money out. And so one of the things that I've sought to do with my committee, the Ghana Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, is to seek the loan agreement between GNPC and the Ministry of Finance. So far, I've not seen it. What I've seen is just a letter that was written requesting for the money. But I've not seen any loan agreement that spells out the terms of repayment of that loan and within which time frame.
I see. So, I mean, I think what a lot of Ghanaians will want to know is that whether or not money has been lost. As far as you know, money has not been lost. It has just been improperly allocated. That money is there, but it's just not going to the right place. It's sitting somewhere, but not the right place. So the money has not been lost to the state. Is that correct?
That is correct. The money has not been lost to the state, but the law regarding the money
in your view
of petroleum revenues have been breached.
Very well. I wish you could hold on for me whilst we take responses on this matter around the table just in a few minutes. So Franklin, I don't know where you want to start, but Mantia has laid out the point. He thinks that the law has been breached. Whether that is enough to call for a censure of the finance minister is another matter. And so within the context of the motion for vote of censure, I'm not sure what to think, given the explanation of Dr. Mantia and what you know yourself in your own work about the oil revenue into, I mean, the payment or illegal payment of the oil revenue into the so-called offshore account. What do you make of all of that? Should that be grounds enough for finance minister to be censored, especially as we don't have any evidence that he knew about this?
Good morning to my good friends and listeners as well. I must say that the sitting, should I call it, the hearing has been quite positive. I think that our democracy has inched a notch up higher. But I seriously also think that the minister somehow acquitted himself with the explanations he gave, simply because of the nature of the accusations or the grounds that were brought up against him. Some of them bordered on policy, and obviously some of them bordered on issues around, divergence over what constituted misreporting or deliberate, should I call it, breaking of the law. But as I said, I think he was given a fair opportunity to explain himself, and barring a few explanations that I found quite problematic, especially the ones that had to do with the Cathedral, I think he was also somehow more or less given a quite narrow. I mean, the grounds were a bit quite narrowing, and so it afforded him the opportunity to explain himself quite well. I think generally on the Cathedral, though, I saw that there were certain false equivalencies established with the funding of the Black Stars. As I'm told, the Black Stars expenditure of pre-financing arrangements is something that is in keeping with international standards, and eventually the FIFA pays the money. Question I have, and maybe this may not necessarily be part of the reasons why it's being censured, but clearly I would have wanted to know whether the Cathedral money will be paid back. I do not know whether there are instances where we are going to get value for money. I mean, we can have a debate as to what constitutes value for money in this regard, because some people can say it's provide spiritual value. But I just wanted to make the point that clearly there was some false equivalency established concerning the pre-financing of our appearance at the World Cup. But you see, concerning the other allegations about the economic mismanagement, I think the minister was given a quite narrow, should I call it? I mean, the framing of the charge was quite narrow. I mean, there have been several instances about procurement breaches in this administration that I think could have also been brought up. Really, I mean, I look at the Auditor General's report, and I say that between 2010 and 2014, whereas MDA's infractions valued almost about $1.3 billion, between 2015 and 2020, that value had shot up by almost 10 times to close to 13-14 billion Ghana cedis. There are a lot of incidents where I suspect if these matters have been brought to the fore, the minister probably would have been found wanting. But as I say, he was given a quite narrower charge sheet, and he acquitted himself quite well on those.
Would you say that the grounds were hastily put together, given that they came to Parliament also on the 25th of October, and they were just not aware? A section of the majority caucus hosts a press conference and then makes this announcement. They found it quite a fertile time to push this motion of censure they've always been thinking about. And so quickly they put themselves together, put their grounds together, and then filed it. Do you think that the narrowness in the grounds you're talking about, and even some other few things we've seen in there, can be blamed on the fact that these grounds were hastily put together just to cash in on the disapproval of the finance minister from the section of the majority MPs?
I wouldn't necessarily say they were hastily put together, and I take the point that it was also particularly timing. I mean, it was important to take advantage of the times we are in. I wouldn't necessarily say they were hastily put together, especially when you look at the charge about the economic mismanagement. I'm always saying that the what's it called, the breadth of the charge was quite narrower, and that's where I actually stand. I wouldn't necessarily say it was just rushed.
I see. All right. But I didn't quite hear you on the oil bit, Dr. Mantial's point and this whole thing about GNPC, JOHL, and the Petroleum Holding Fund.
Oh, I mean, for me, the question I have about this really is that if the Finance Ministry would loan on behalf of the country, loan money to an entity that claims it was broke, and then eventually say that because of the nature of its arrangements in this holding, it does not necessarily have to report to us as to how these funds are treated. I think that's an aberration, and I do not. I mean, to suggest that because it's a separate entity created, therefore we should not be concerned about the way its dividends or its affairs are handled. It's quite problematic. I mean, if the GNPC had wanted to have this type of arrangement where they would not respond to us or report to us about their dealings in an entity they claim they are just more or less, I mean, it's a private enterprise, then they shouldn't probably be borrowing money from the state. I mean, the fact that the state is lending money, the state is not a bank for everybody, really. And even if it was a bank for this, a state entity like GNPC, the state must have a say in how the affairs of these entities are conducted.
I see. All right. Let me come to Honorable Titus Glover on this whole thing about the illegal payment of oil revenues. Of course, Ken did not speak to it because in the wisdom of the committee, their statement, which officially invited Ken to respond to the allegations, said that he did not have to respond to that ground. That was ground 3 because they were satisfied from their statement. They were satisfied with the explanations given by PIAC and GNPC. So he didn't have to talk about. We don't know what they picked. We don't know what their satisfaction meant. But maybe they felt Ken did not have to respond to that. What do you make of all of that? The fact of the GNPC trying to take money from somewhere to another fund, that clearly breaches the law and all of that.
Clearly, I'm not in the minds of the committee, and listening to both the GNPC and the PIAC, they firm up exactly what they want to capture in their report. But I think that you look at what the law states, clearly. If the law is saying that put the money in the petroleum holding fund, finito. I mean, I don't see why. So
in your view, that's also a breach because they put the money elsewhere.
Fundamentally or essentially, first of all, you need to look at the law. When the oil is extracted, when the GNPC sells its oil, where are they supposed to lodge the funds? Is it the petroleum holding fund?
Yes.
That is where it's supposed to go. That's what the law says. So if this is what the law says, I don't see anything different from that. And what do you call it? Dr. Mantia was saying that the GNPC wanted to have the account running. And for that matter, they felt that they could first lodge the money in their company account before transferring into their petroleum holding account. So we need to look at it carefully, because my understanding is that when it's lodged into the petroleum holding fund account, then some will transfer by government into the GNPC. Is that not the case? But this time is the reverse. The GNPC will lodge into the account before transferring into the petroleum holding account. Normally, what the GNPC does is that they will come with a work program to Parliament. The Parliament will look at all their work programs and attach expenditure and the funding that will go to it. The Parliament will approve for GNPC. So when this approval is given, based on that, they'll begin to execute all activities within the year. So if indeed they have made some money, oil sales, blah 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 blah, and it's supposed to be lodged into an account, let it go there. My question I ask myself is, if GNPC has done this, why should the minister be punished?
But what does it say about his supervision? Because all monies that are accrued to the state, I mean, that's his work. He manages the finances of the state. Oil money, plenty money like this, over 100 million. I mean, what does it say about his supervision?
I think that it is not necessarily him. The energy minister must also be questioned why such a thing is happening in his ministry and he's not referring to. Well, you might think that maybe the finance minister is quiet, is not ensuring that the law is fully...
Because for a country that says we need revenue.
Do you understand? And I don't see this leading to a censorship of the finance minister because he had not called for the money into the petroleum holding fund account. That's all it's about, his censure. But he did not sanction that. You understand? GNPC is an institution of state by statute.
Can't we subsume this under the alarming incompetence and frightening ineptitude
where is this?
resulting
this is
in the collapse
of
the Ghanaian economy and the excruciating cost of living?
Is this
not ineptitude?
This is not ineptitude.
Is it not incompetence?
This is not.
Over 100 million is being transferred somewhere, and you don't know about it.
Please, this is not ineptitude.
Especially as you know from the past, they have done it before, and you caused them to do it.
So please, the money should have gone to account A and is sent to account B, All you need to do is to write to them to bring back the money, and that if
and he didn't know, or maybe he knew, he didn't say anything.
If he didn't know, it's a different matter.
But that even cause for worry.
Asking me,
because it's such a huge amount of money. How about the 1 million, 2 million, 3 million that are small?
Please. If he knows, I'm sure he might have worked on it to bring it back. Sitting here will be very difficult for me to know what is in the mind of Kenofrata, to know that there's a money that is lodged into a GNPC account instead of petrol holding account.
Very well.
It is very difficult for me.
Yes.
So I think that the only remedy or to cure this mishap is to write that GNPC transfer the money into the petrol.
And nobody gets punished.
I don't see the censorship with this matter.
Very well.
Not at all.
Honorable Sweeney, the minister really, I mean, this is not his area. This money someone has to put somewhere, but they put elsewhere. Why should the minister be punished for it?
The minister should be punished for it because as things stand now, Salom, one of the reasons why our debt is considered unsustainable is because of our challenge with raising revenue. Revenue available to government to fund even the debts that we have accrued has become a challenge. And so if you have such revenue slippages, I'll call it slippages, then it is fair to say that the person in charge of managing the finances is incompetent and in ineptitude. It is fair. Because if one of your biggest problems today is revenue, and that's what the IMF says, and that is why our debt is unsustainable, because other countries actually have more debts than we do, but they are not considered unsustainable because they raise enough revenue that guarantees their ability to pay. So if you live in a country where revenue mobilization and utilization is the biggest problem, you cannot say that $100 million that should have been properly accounted for and properly transferred and perhaps properly utilized is not utilized, should just be considered, a mere, infraction. No. But it speaks to the charge of ineptitude and incompetence.
But curiously, your colleagues on the committee from your side, think that he is not supposed to answer for that. I don't know what they will say in their report.
No, you see, so you have to understand. That's why I have stressed it more than once on this platform.
That we don't know what the committee will say.
Yes, that the two charges have not been struck out.
Yeah,
they simply came to the conclusion that they have had enough information to make a determination on those grounds.
But if you be hung on the fact that
if you allow me to explain this point, I mean, for example, on ground one, when Gabi referred to Article 287, and the committee agreed with him, the conflict of interest matter. The committee said that, in fact, and I heard Dr. Ayini say so, that it is a fair objection to raise, but they will be submitting a report based on what they also think, because the challenge was that the committee can look into it. So the committee will report on whether they think they can look into it or not, and whether they think it was justifiable to look into it or not. And I think the committee was justified. I mean, if you look at Article 103.3 of the 1992 Constitution, yes, inquiries and investigations into any ministry.
Tell me whether indeed.
Do you understand? So the committee can come to the conclusion that objection was really much ado about nothing, and that the committee was properly constituted, and they were in good standard to look at that matter. 103.3.
Yes.
Parliament can set up any committee to look into any matter. It does not matter if that matter, should have gone to Shraj or should have gone. It does not stop, Parliament from still looking into it. What we are not encouraged to look into is where there are judgments, where there are already,
where there are matters of constitutional interpretation.
Exactly.
You cannot do that.
Exactly. But the point is, So let's wait and see what the what do you call it, the committee will do. And if you look at even Article 78.3, Office of Profit, there again, Parliament has a role to determine conflict of interest. That is where a committee of Parliament, to some extent, that's where a committee of Parliament has to be set up, so that ministers who want to hold any office of profit will have to be cleared, and the determination that they can hold the office includes that they will not be engaged in conflict of interest.
Yeah, but so, this one is not about holding office.
It's not about holding. But it's also about benefiting conflict of interest. It's about conflict of interest. So Parliament can even determine whether a minister can hold an office with profit or not. And I'm saying that relates to determining conflict of interest matters. If you listen to Gabi, his argument was that any matter to do with conflict of interest must go to Shraj. I'm saying that Article 78.3 clearly suggests that Parliament can also deal with conflict of interest matters.
You see, let me come in.
Do you understand? But let's all wait. Let's all be patient and
see
wait
what the report
and see what the report will say.
We have listened a lot of.
Yes,
we have listened a lot of the report.
But moving on.
Just a second. Because the minority are extending the recognition that he has benefited from the transactions of the state, i.e. loans and data bank. You know, they made a lot of emphasis there. That is what Gabi came in, that some determination has been made from Shraj all the way to the Supreme Court. So when you come back to stress on this very matter again, it's like double jeopardy.
Exactly. So that is why the committee may say that yes.
Cool down.
No, let me just ask you interrupted. Let me just also
103. You can look at activities to some extent.
What I'm saying is that
you are not close.
What I'm saying is that the committee may have come to the conclusion that they will not allow the minister to suffer double jeopardy, but may have disagreed with Gabi's assertion that they cannot go into conflict of interest matters. So that can be, for me, a fair, reason why they did not want to go into it. The double jeopardy matter, the fact that he has been tried already on it and there's a ruling on it, but they can disagree with the assertion that Parliament cannot consider conflict of interest matters. That may be a ruling. I'm not saying that is a ruling, but that may be the ruling of the committee. And on the issue of what do you call it, the consolidated fund and the monies that should have been paid from JOHL,
Jubilee Oil Holding Limited.
You see, Selim, you are the lawyers. I mean, I read the Constitution in black and white. I understand it from the layman's point of view. But I simply was unable to follow the argument of the finance minister and that of Honorable K.T. Hammond. Selim, Article 1761. Article 1761 of the 1992 Constitution. And if you permit me, I will just open to it and share. Perhaps you can educate us more. It says, there shall be paid into the consolidated fund, subject to the provisions of this article. A, all revenues, all, or other monies raised or received for the purposes of or on behalf of the government. And B, any other monies raised or received in trust for or on behalf of the government. So when you hear the argument that JHOL is governed by the Companies Act, and so if they raise money, any other money, in my view, on behalf
of the government,
of the
people of Ghana,
and it is not accounted for the way it should be accounted for by the PFM, PFM Act or now law. I am unable to understand how you can treat that money that GHOL is supposed to be holding on behalf of the government of Ghana separately from all other monies raised or received. How? Just because it is a limited liability company. I am unable to wrap my head around that explanation. And so because of that, you cannot hold the person who should have made sure that these monies are properly accounted for responsibly.
So like you yourself have said, let's see what the committee will say
Exactly.
on
so,
this.
So for me, in that case also, I believe that the committee, after listening to PIAC and listening to GNPC, came to the conclusion that they have enough information to pronounce on it and did not need the finance minister's, input. And that is why they gave him the option. And they suggested to him that if he made an input, he will open himself up for questioning. But if he didn't, they have enough information to make a determination on that matter.
Well.
And for me, it will be interesting to read what their determination will be.
But forward to that.
Whatever it is, Salam, I will conclude again that if that money, as we all have agreed, has not been accounted for the way it should have been accounted for,
there's a breach.
Whether as a result of a conflict between the Constitution and the Companies Act, you cannot still run away from the fact that somebody should have been chasing it and not just PIAC. And if PIAC drew his attention to it, and one of our biggest problems in this country is revenue, and he did not see the urgent need to go after that money.
It's
speaks
particularly
of
even curious
ineptitude and incompetence.
As the directors of those companies, as we know, are not private people. But I'll take a break, return, and Alex Mode is joined the discussion. He's been a former chief executive of GNPC. He will also have some interventions to make. This is a big issue. Dr. Mantia, we thank you so much. But if you want to stay on and listen to Alex Mode, because he brings some industry experience and all of that, I'll be very glad so that we can tie this up together. Thank you so much. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
World Cup 2022. Mepisa titu bebrese. Phone bang. Home theater bang. TV bang so no mbeheno. Hisense TV.
Hisense TV.
What's the World Cup for Hisense TV swa? Channel. Clear. So connect to Hisense home theater and the Hisense TV. Commentary no. Obertin say kick him. As the original hobby. Kenya say, yes, that's the World Cup match. No one get traffic me. And no the Hisense smartphone. And dance. Show our phone so picture the sound clear. Qatar 22 World Cup. Yet must I share no feeling. Yet himself so tons for my heading. Madam Hisense, Martin to sale. And to day. Hisense World Cup triple promo. Every 20th October, coming 28th November. Mobile phone, sound system, TV, one Tobia, 1 year home. Hisense one about 5 years warranty. Hisense, everyday prices for everyday people.
Men do not like overconfident women.
Don't touch me without my permission.
I'm a playful guy and I do get carried away sometimes.
You are selfish, manipulating, and you are a narcissist.
After all I've done for you.
What have you done for me?
You actually called me Barry.
You know my mom doesn't know any better, right?
You say that now, but then when you see your mother, you start to act like you're deaf and dumb.
You were supposed to be more careful.
I've been.
Clearly not enough.
City TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and StarTimes box. City TV, it's your world.
Yeah, welcome back to the big issue on 97.3 City FM on City TV and also on YouTube. My name is Selom Adunu. Yes, so we're looking at the matter of the so-called illegal payment of oil revenues into offshore accounts in flagrant violation of Article 176 of the 1992 Constitution, which is ground 3 of the proponents' grounds for the censure of Finance Minister Kenofurata. It's important to know that the committee did not take a response from Kenofurata on this because they said they were satisfied with information they had from the proponents, from the PIAC and the GNPC on this. We've been joined on the line also by a former Deputy Chief Executive of GNPC who, on Zoom, Alex, former Chief Executive of GNPC, formerly MPA and then GNPC, who should know a lot about these. So he will give us some insight into this whole JOHL, PRMA, and all of that, and what PIAC does, and whether the money sent into that account was proper or not. I mean, just to have some understanding from him on that. Good morning, Alex Mo. Thanks for joining the program. You've listened to the GNPC and PIAC on the matter. Of course, you're also conversant with the grounds we are talking about, illegal payment of money, etc., into offshore accounts. Will you say that the payment of the money into the JOHL account, for a start, was illegal, and why?
Actually, I don't know whether any money was paid into JOHL's account, but I think it's better we understand the background of JOHL, this whole transaction, and ask the right questions, because I personally don't think the right questions were asked to the minister. First of all, JOHL was formed by Anadafo. It was not formed by GNPC. It was formed by Anadafo because GNPC invoked what we call a preemptive option to buy part of the block that Anadafo was selling to Cosmos, and that sale was effective on the 1st of April 2021. Effective means that the valuation of the reserves for both the two different fields that Anadafo has shares in the two different blocks, that is the 10 field, which is in DWT, and then the Jubilee field, which is, the 10 field, which is in DWT, and the Jubilee field, which is in, I think, the Westgate 3 Points field. So Anadaku set up this company and set it up mainly because GNPC did not have authorization yet to buy the shares, nor did GNPC have the money. So they said they would put the shares in this offshore company so that when GNPC pays for it, GNPC, that JOHL can be transferred to GNPC. I think the whole essence was that GNPC would then transfer this particular JOHL company to Explorco, which is their operating arm, a subsidiary. So JOHL became a subsidiary on the 21st of September, which is the date GNPC paid the $164.8 million. The actual valuation of the field, the share of what GNPC got was done on the 1st of April, and that was $199.38 million. However, between April 1st and September 21st, a cargo was sold, or there was some sale of crude oil, which benefited the field. And as such, it was used to offset the 199, and that brought the final amount to 164.79, about $0.8 million. What happened after that was that GNPC did not have funds to pay. So GNPC asked Ministry of Finance to pay on their behalf.
Just one line on that. Just one line. Yes.
You know that GNPC is owed by Ghana government to the tune of about $314 million, which is on their balance sheets directly and indirectly. This is owed by Ministry of Finance directly about $150 million and indirectly via loans that GNPC gave to companies owned by Ministry of Finance, or the government of Ghana, which
The line...
300... Is the line shaking?
Yes, it was, but go ahead. It's better now.
Yeah. The amount owed was 314 million. And I think GNPC thought they could get that money from Ministry of Finance to use to pay. However, it turned out that Ministry of Finance said no, they were not going to pay the 314 million. They would rather lend $164.8 million to GNPC. And this was the money that was paid to GNPC. You know, during the transaction of Anadakun's sale of the block, there was an outstanding tax obligation of Anadakun of approximately $170 million, which was paid to government of Ghana. Now, my understanding is that part of that money is what was used by Ministry of Finance to pay GNPC. And a loan agreement was put in place where GNPC would pay interest of $5.2 million, bringing the total amount GNPC should pay back to government of Ghana, Ministry of Finance, as $170 million. This was agreed to be paid in 3 tranches, with the 60 million being paid first and the balance of 110 million being paid in 2 tranches over a period that was agreed. Apparently, there is a loan agreement. So I think the questions that should have been asked was to the Minister of Finance was, upon what authority did he lend GNPC the 164.38 million?
Yes, I think the line is still giving a problem. So we'll see. So he was at the point where he said that he thought the questions asked of the minister were not maybe up to scratch. He thinks that the key question should have been that under what authority did he loan the $164 million to the GNPC. And it would have been interesting, actually interesting to see that agreement and see what the terms are. But very interesting points. Let me see if Alex is back. If his line is better, then we can continue to hear him. Alex. Okay, so his line is still not back. Dr. Mantiao, Dr. Mantiao, a lot of the things that Mr. Alex Moda has said essentially agrees with the points you have made. Do you have any comment on that so far?
Hello?
Yes,
hello?
Alex, okay, you are back. So you were on the point that under what authority did the Ministry of Finance loan the money to GNPC? That was where you were before the line went bad.
Yes, and that is the question that should have been asked to the minister, because that would then imply that he had authority to do that from somewhere. Secondly, the question should be asked from GNPC in that who gave them authority to set up the JOHL, to buy the JOHL? Did they get approval for that? And at what level should they get the authority? Is the authority from their board or from the ministry or from Parliament? The third question is the loan agreement that was set up between GNPC and Ministry of Finance. Should it have gone through Ministry of Finance, either from GNPC's end or from Ministry of Finance's end?
I see. So so with all you've said, it's not actually a problem for GNPC to fund its own subsidiary. In this case, we are calling the JOHL a subsidiary, and the Esploko also is a subsidiary. So it is not out of place.
Before GNPC would do that, it should be in its work program. GNPC brings a work program to Parliament. And in that work program, it states exactly what it would be doing. So if GNPC had an approval but did not include this, GNPC would have to go back to Parliament for approval, because the work program of GNPC is approved by Parliament. And your work program includes what you will be doing, including setting up subsidiaries, funding them, and all of that. However, the question really that Parliament has to look at is, if GNPC has a subsidiary that it funded, whether it is an agri subsidiary or an oil and gas subsidiary, should the funds from that subsidiary be put in the PHF? I personally don't think so, but that's for Parliament to ascertain. Secondly, any dividends that is paid to GNPC, should that also be put in PHF? I think it should be put in PHF.
I see. Let me speak to Franklin and see what he makes of all the things you have said. Hello, Franklin. Do you know under what authority the GNPC could have, or the Ministry of Finance could have loaned that money to GNPC? Do you find anything unusual about this, or you think by virtue of the operations of the Finance Ministry, they could advance money to one of the agencies of government in that manner?
No, I wouldn't know, and I think this is the question that, as I said, should have also been asked of the minister. If the terms of the accusations were not narrow, so I think Alex is on solid grounds on this, because we haven't cited the agreement. We don't know what the agreement entailed. We don't know whose authority was invoked in order to bless this deal, which looks like a sweetheart deal. And so we needed to know those terms as well. So I think these were valid questions that should have been added to the GNPC questions as well.
I see. No,
I have another if I may.
Yes, let me hear you.
Yeah, you remember I mentioned that the government of Ghana owes GNPC 314 million.
Mm-hmm.
So GNPC goes into an agreement with government of Ghana to borrow 164 million, where the terms and conditions are that they should pay interest to government. However, GNPC has a loan to government of Ghana of 314 million, of which 150 million is an actual loan direct to Ministry of Finance, where Ministry of Finance has borrowed money from GNPC. And there is no agreement, there is no terms and conditions of government of Ghana paying them any interest. And I find that very interesting. And these are the kind of issues that I believe our parliamentarians should take up with the minister and with GNPC. GNPC has had $314 million on lent to government. Is GNPC government's piggy bank? That is the question that should be asked.
So for you, clearly, the pass given by the finance minister that he should not necessarily respond to the matters of this illegal allocation of oil revenues, you think was premature? It shouldn't have been. The minister should have responded to that allegation.
Oh, the minister was bailed out big time. He was bailed out big time by the committee. And this should be asked, and I think it should be asked by the select committee of mines and energy to GNPC and brought back so that the minister can come and answer these questions. The GNPC should not, and no government institutions, SNIT, GNPC, all of these should not be the piggy bank of the
piggy bank
of the Ministry of Finance.
Mm.
Yes, because when companies and when institutions like the World Bank and the rating agencies come, they look at all these books and they see where the Ministry of Finance is hiding most of its debt, and they add this back to the debt. My understanding is that if you add all the amounts owed by the Ministry of Finance to these SOEs, the big SOEs, including the power sector, where government of Ghana has blatantly subsidized the fuel without paying these players, we're talking about something close to $2 to $3 billion easily owed by Ministry of Finance to the entities.
I see. I see. Yes, I see, Dr. Mantiel. Okay, yeah, no, so yes. Wait, Honorable Titus Global needs a clarification.
Clarify one or two for me. At one point, he said GNPC borrowed money to the Ministry of Finance, and another point, he said Ministry of Finance also borrowed money with interest of 5% to GNPC. I need that clarity well. He made mention of $340 million that GNPC borrowed to the Ministry of Finance. He described that as not. Should not be seen as a bank for the state. which of the monies with the interest of 5% that Ministry of Finance gave it to GNPC? I need some clarity.
So Alex, since you are here, I mean, you want to clarify that?
Yes, actually, over the years, GNPC has been paying for some of the energy issues, including roads for making sure that Atwabo can be in the western region and other things. GNPC also has lent money to BOST and also lent monies to other institutions owned by Ministry of Finance. The total amount that is due on their balance sheets is approximately $314 million. This has been on the balance sheets for 5 to 6 years of GNPC, or maybe even longer. And GNPC always requires these companies and Ministry of Finance, who guarantee these payments, to pay the monies back to GNPC. This basically has not been done. Now, on the $164 million, this was a loan agreement. Remember, the others are advances GNPC has made to these companies and to Ministry of Finance directly. This particular $164 million is a loan agreement where the Ministry of Finance gave money to GNPC specifically to purchase the shares that Anadaku had allocated to GNPC for the two fields, 10 and Jubilee. And this payment was made somewhere early October, by mid-October, 13th October or so, 2021.
So this is the one with the 5% interest, is that correct?
It's not 5%. It was $5.2 million interest.
Okay, $5.2 million.
So the total amount then comes to $170 million payable by GNPC in 3 installments, of which the first $60 million, I understand, has been paid.
Okay, so what's the tenor of this loan? Payable by what time? In 3 installments by what time?
I have no clue. I haven't seen the agreement yet. This is one of the things that Parliament should have asked the minister to produce. These are the questions that he should have been asked. And unfortunately, these questions were not asked. And the most important question that should have been asked is, who gave the minister the authority to lend GNPC $164.8 billion? And who gave GNPC the authority to borrow $164.8 billion? The question really is, where do these authorizations lie? And was anything breached? Was there a violation of that? Now, I've heard about $100 million of crude sales that were paid to some accounts outside the normal payment area, which is the PHF. I have no evidence, I have no information to that. I think Steve and Piak could actually give us more information, because it would mean that an instruction should have been given to the buyer of the crude oil to actually make a payment into an offshore account owned by an offshore company, JOHL. I haven't seen that, and I don't know which company bought the oil, and I don't know where the payment was made from. Unless we are saying that the $100 million was the loan that government of Ghana gave to GNPC and was paid into an offshore account. They would be paying this money to Anadaku, because Anadaku sold the shares of these particular fields to GNPC. So I'm confused about the $100 million, and maybe somebody can shed more light on this $100 million payment, whether it was from the crude oil sales or whether it was from the consolidated fund.
I see. Dr. Mantia, do you have any answer to that?
Well, yes, GNPC responded to Pia's request for information on this. And my own committee, the Ghana Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, has met with GNPC management, and they've actually confirmed that indeed the monies were paid into an offshore account. And they sought to justify their actions.
So where was it paid from? Where was it paid from? Into the offshore account?
Those are proceeds from the oil lifting in respect of Ghana's 7% additional participating interest acquired from Occidental. just a quick correction in something that Alex Mood had said.
But do you know who bought the oil? Do you know who bought the oil?
I don't have those details. But if you will permit me, just want to make some quick corrections in something that Alex Mood had said.
Very well.
That the JOHL was established by Anadaco. That cannot be right. Because Anadaco has been bought by Occidental. And it was Occidental that was offloading its interest in Ghana and other African countries. So it couldn't have been Anadaco that set up JOHL. It is Occidental. Secondly, he mentioned something about the fact that some expected tax revenue was used to offset some liability. Again, we heard about that our expected capital gain tax was actually used in this transaction to acquire the 7%. Checks with GRA does not support that. According to GRA, they were not, I emphasize, involved in this whole transaction, which is an anomaly. You cannot be dealing with a transaction that has the potential to give rise to tax opportunity to the state and exclude your tax agency. But that is what happened. So this whole negotiation was between GNPC, the finance minister, and the, Occidental. And I thought that was also not good. So I agree with Alex Mood when he says that the right questions were not asked. And this is not the first time there's been some loan transactions between GNPC and the Minister of Finance. And Alex is right when he mentions those other monies that were advanced to state-owned entity at the instance of the Minister of Finance. One that comes to mind, which almost got Ghana into trouble. It was in the year, I guess, 2016, and Ghana was going for an EITI international validation. And Ghana was cited for engaging in quasi-fiscal expenditures using our national oil company and in a way that is not transparent. This is in respect of some $50 million that GNPC supposedly advanced to the Ministry of Finance. Of course, GNPC says they did not advance that money. It was withheld from their monies. But the ministry says GNPC advanced. We asked for a loan agreement. There was none. And so we had to even support to save Ghana to quickly draft a loan agreement. When it was submitted to the International Secretariat, it was not signed. And so it was quite embarrassing. And because of that, Ghana failed to achieve satisfactory outcome from its EITI international validation in 2016. And so these are issues that I thought if the committee that put together, or the team that put together these charges against the minister, had really opened up a bit. Some of us could have actually submitted a memorandum to them to let them know what the actual breaches are. The questions they raised in this hearing did not go to the core of the actual breaches. I'll give you an example here. From 2017 up until 2020, when I chaired PIAC, we reported that some amount of annual budget funding amount could not be accounted for by the minister. Each time the minister gave us stories, only for the minister in the 2022 budget to come and tell Ghanaians that that money that they could not account for from 2017 to 2020 thereabout have been used for COVID mitigation. Now, question is, did he get parliamentary approval to vary the use of those monies, or did he take that decision all by himself? Because those monies have been approved, duly approved by Parliament for specific projects, and he didn't have the authority to vary them without recourse to Parliament. These are questions that never came up in the hearing.
You talked about the questions not being asked. Does that speak to the capacity of the MPs or the members on the committee, and especially as all these questions hung, and he appeared to have been given a pass, that he did not need to speak to this particular ground? That should be very disappointing to you then.
Yeah, it was really disappointing. There were lots of issues in terms of breaches. I've been so frustrated as at least working on PIAC, some of these breaches. And I said, shall we continue always to highlight breaches? Look, on one particular occasion, I was on the floor of Parliament, Parliamentary Committee of Finance and Mines and Energy, and I pointed to them a breach by the minister. And then the committee accepted and said, okay, then shall we reject the report? And another member of parliament said, look, if you were to reject this report because of the breach, then it means you have to reject all previous reports, because all those previous reports were in breach of the law. And so they allow it to pass. So if the team that put together this dossier had actually opened up a little bit, there were a lot more questions that could have nailed the issues than what really was handed over or tabled against the minister.
Very well. Thanks so much, Dr. Mantia. We really appreciate your time and your insight on this. Mr. Alex Mould, very grateful for your time this morning, and we are grateful that you shared your experience and know-how with us. Franklin,
thank you.
The two gentlemen, Alex Mould and Dr. Mantiao, think that the right questions were not asked. Is there anything we can do about the capacity of MPs on committees like this? What can we do to improve the capacity and the understanding of matters like this, so that the nation or the citizenry can get better value for our money?
I'm not too sure about the lack of capacity, and possibly it's the picking and choosing, because these members of parliament are quite well aware of a lot of publications on matters that are being raised by Alex and Steve. And as I told you not long ago, there are so many of them. I mean, if I were to pick one issue concerning, for instance, lack of proper public financial management or value for money considerations on a contract like Kelmy, I would have asked a question. You are looking for money, revenue, but you are not interested in finding out why you want to pay a company $1.5 million every month, even before they began work, to see what work they do. You know, I would have asked a question as to why 88% of financial transactions at one point in time didn't go through the Give Me system. I'd have asked a question why we jumped off the IMF deal when only 2 out of 11, should I call it, structured, well, there were about 11 structured, should I call them, points that were supposed to have been met even before the IMF deal would have elapsed. I mean, there are so many questions that could have been asked if we sort of broaden the scope a bit. But as I said, I'm sure the proponents were also quite interested in taking advantage of the times. And so, yes, maybe next time we should encourage the submission of memoranda. But I don't think they lack capacity at all. But it's a matter of picking and choosing, really.
I see. Let me come to my guest in the studio to take their final comments on this. We'll move to the next issue quickly.
Yes. Generally, I think that both Mr. Steve Manteo and Alex Mould have brought some industry experience to bear in this discussion, and I share their view that some of the questions could have been broader and perhaps more pointed, and maybe it would have revealed much more. But I still do not know why the committee, after listening to GNPC and PIAC, decided not to allow the minister to, open his defense on that matter. I am waiting to read their report. But generally speaking, having listened to both men, I also think that maybe the whole process may have been rushed. You know, if the committee had more time, for example, I'm sure they would have advertised for memorandum, and they would have asked for even more witnesses from the general public to come up with whatever.
Wouldn't that have been fishing? Because we call for this, it means you are ready with your evidence.
No, you see, so you have the grounds that have been established, and PIAC and others came up with the evidence, Atoforsen and others. So these would have all been witnesses. Sometimes when you start a trial, or when you are about to start a trial, you would have done some investigation. But in the course of the trial, if new evidence comes to you, you are still allowed to, go through the right processes to introduce that new evidence. And so I'm saying that perhaps if they had more time, the whole exercise would have been richer than it is. And that's not to take away anything from what we have experienced. Because, I mean, I'm listening to them and I'm thinking to myself, yes, it may even be possible, listening to Alex Mould, that the $100 million that we are talking about, that is with GOHL, may not have even come from oil liftings after all. I mean, because the question of which company bought that oil and which company made the payment to JOHL may not be answered. And so when you juxtapose that with the what I will call the symbiotic loan relationship between GNPC and the Ministry of Finance, you are forgiven to even think that this money may have also been given to GNPC to be paid into that offshore account, whatever. I mean, so because there are really no clear lines guiding that symbiotic loan relationship. So at one point you have GNPC loaning over $300 million to Ministry of Finance by way of supporting some government projects, and yet when that 300 million plus is not paid, there seemed to be a suggestion that about $164 million has been loaned to GNPC by Minister of Finance. I mean, which of them is a loan agent, and what authority do they have to continue with that relationship? Maybe an extended version of what we witnessed that would have allowed for more interested parties to come up with some of these questions and some of these issues would have cleared our minds as far as these transactions are concerned.
Very well. So you are in Parliament. Yeah. Assuming this committee's work does not extend to recall the minister back and all of that, there should really be avenues for you to call for some of these details, so you apprise yourself of what really the details of the loan agreement, etc., and the rationale behind all of that will be. And I think it's an avenue you may want to explore. I
agree. I mean, some of these things are, done appropriately at the committee level. So the Committee of Mines and Energy and members on that committee, I'm sure, are all following these discussions. And I mean, yes, we will all support with that discussion and see what Parliament can do.
Very well.
My take on this matter is regards to the charge of this payment of this monies into a wrongful account, and for that matter, this censure has come at the head of the finance minister. Clearly, Dr. Mantea has really opened up some information for us, which I think that can help us going forward. And like I did indicate earlier, and it was also said by Alex, in terms of the work plan of GNPC activities, every year they need to come to the plenary to tell us exactly what they want to do. When they give them the program of activities, how they want to fund it, and all that, it gives Parliament opportunity to give the approval and also guide in all the activities that GNP is doing. Because before you move to the New Year activities, Parliament have to find out whether indeed the approval that they gave you and the activity that you want to do has been conformed to. Then, based on that, a report is generated. Then your subsequent New Year activity can be looked into.
But it's not clear that this is.
So that is why I'm saying that. That is why I'm saying that we are all not privy to the work plan of GNPC as to how Anadaku shares was bought by GNPC and all those activities. Then the issue about funding of these activities, the source of funding, how they want to raise it, and all that. Then also, Alex says something. The loans that GNPC has been given to support government, it has been started way back from Adam, and I'm sure it's continuing. But now we need to let Parliament come into the picture. The Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament and the Finance Committee of Parliament must be privy to some of these things. Do you understand? So they'll be in the position to check. So if government want GNPC to loan or support some government project, I see nothing wrong about it. But something need to be done. That's we need to put Parliament in the picture so that when we're doing the tracking or to find out what has been done, we will not be caught in the web where maybe the Finance Ministry and the GNPC and any other state institution, they want to do something. Parliament need to come into the picture to know what can be done about it. Then the Mantea also made mention about the use of the capital gain tax without the inclusion of GRA. I see that area as very critical. Because
the infraction just not too many.
So I'm a bit uncomfortable from the position that Dr. Mantea is coming up. Then again, the 1 week the Speaker gave to the committee, if the committee thinks that it's not enough, they can still go back to Mr. Speaker to ask for some extension.
I don't know how it really works, because budgets will have to be read sometime next week by the same finance minister.
They can break. They can break and deal with the budget. You know, that is why I'm saying that the co-chairman can meet
and
right
once
on the
they
speaker.
take the budget, debate then follows. Appropriation.
What I'm saying
and
is
all
that it is not a rush. It is not a rush. The co-chairman can approach right honorable speaker and tell them their challenge that they have, and for that matter, they need some extra days or weeks to firm up whatever they want to do. And if by way of trying to get some other information and what do you call it, Dr. Mantia and other people can. But I'm happy about the discussion, the way it's going.
Yes, very well. So we take a short break. We'll come back and look at the matter of the minimum wage, what we can do about that, cost of living, etc. And also, the finance minister really wasn't happy about the sacking of his Minister of State. He called that entrapment. He found a way of dealing with that. The analysis video. We'll take a comment or two from our guest on that if we find the time. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Please listen carefully. God is speaking to us.
It's that time again. Impact 2022.
Today, we block the delays. We override the delays. We will celebrate the victory and the triumph. Put down, cancel every delay tactics of the enemy on the account of the blood of Jesus.
Ministering, Apostle Joshua Selman.
God does not speak sympathizing with your current situation. He speaks as touching your destiny.
Pastor Jerry Eze.
I command the power of delay be broken. Let your amen thunder louder.
Reverend Eastwood Anaba.
The time has come for you to stop playing religion and take your destiny in your hand.
Bishop Gregory Toussaint.
Spiritual warfare is first of all a lifestyle. You fight Satan primarily by the way that you live.
Dr. David Enchi, Apostle Francina Norman, Prophet Victor Kusibuate, Prophet Ajiman Prempe, introducing Minister Jonathan Rubain. 8 days and 8 nights of power and impact, including a prayer breakfast on Saturday, December 3rd at the Prayer Mountain with Apostle Joshua Selman. Visit linktr.ee/actionch for transportation, registration, and prayer breakfast tickets. Impact 2022, bridging the gap.
Transformed. Am I holding it right? Yes. Okay. Do you like the feeling? I love it. I feel like a princess.
Yes. And handicraft pays well. Yes. When it is done very well.
And it has an important place.
It has an important place in the economy of Morocco. It's the handicrafts of Morocco is very much exported, and it draws a lot of foreign currency to the government. So if the origin is from Morocco exactly, but I only see it in Morocco, for example. There is one is called Jawhara, which is in Arabic JOHL. It has some strains, like long strains.
Everybody how to hold it. Okay, so it drops like this.
So it drops like this, and then you take gently this one, and then you turn it like that.
Like that?
Yes, and then you can.
Yeah, welcome back to the big issue on 97.3 City FM on City TV and on YouTube, CityTube as well. So we've just discussed the ad hoc committee's work, what they should have done, what they should do, what went right, what didn't go quite well, and what the lessons will be. We want to briefly look at the matter of the minimum wage. The minimum wage has gone up by 10% to 14.88 effective January 2023. It used to be 12.53 cedis. That's from last year. And this is in accordance with Section 1131A of the Labour Act, and comes after negotiations were concluded by the National Tripartite Committee of the meeting held earlier in the week. Let me start with you, Franklin. Minimum wage 14.88 in a country where inflation is above 40%. There's depreciation of the cedi. I mean, things are not really looking good. At this rate, who actually survives on the minimum wage? I also ask this question, knowing very well that if it is increased, it has an effect on government budget and government, bottom line. I mean, what is 14.88 cedis in a country as Ghana? What can we be doing?
Well, I mean, if the minimum wage is obviously pegged as it is, presupposes that it's based on what government's ability to pay its own workers, public sector workers. And you'd understand that that could also be the basis on which private sector employers would deal with their employees. But there's a vast difference between what the government can afford to pay its public sector workers as against what the private sector can also afford to pay. But even though they all work within the same ecosystem, the economy that is. Unfortunately, like you asked, this value is so demented that by the time it is supposed to take effect, it would have even been demented a lot more. I mean, the value would have been probably halved by the time we are looking at January, given the rate at which inflation and indeed the exchange rate is also playing out. So we are in perilous times, as everybody knows. Unfortunately, I do not know how the government is able to up the salaries because I think public sector workers, or a segment of public sector workers, have also asked for a 60% increase in salary. Yes. Right. Now, the government obviously cannot afford that. And I think the public should know by now that in the next 2 to 3 years, things are going to stay this way until something keeps really. So, first of all, the government may need to generate a lot of resources. I don't know where they're going to generate from, except to probably do a bit more in terms of proper value for money spending on a lot of the projects. I think that the jury is still out there as to whether government should continuously cut its own expenditure, even though that may not necessarily make a huge difference in this when it comes to the revenue the government is supposed to eke out for the next payment of salaries coming next year. So I'm sorry, I do not have any wonderful answers to give, except to say that if things had been a bit more, if we had managed our affairs a lot more better, and by that I mean 60% of the apportioning of the blame for where we are right now can be laid at the doorsteps of the government. If we have done those, if we are taking steps to ensure that we did not get to where we are, at least we've spent our monies wisely, and then also ensure that people were being paid productively, as in working productively and being paid, maybe we wouldn't be getting to where we are right now. And I think this also caused into question the way we probably pay public sector workers. I've never been a fan of the single spine system. I mean, I think it's one of the fundamental flaws of nature against the laws of demand and supply. I do not understand why I may have a degree in, let's say, I'm not devaluing the study of classics, but if I have a degree in classics and I probably do not find a job, and you have a degree in accounting and you are breaking your back, configuring numbers and making estimations I don't see why we should be paid the same amount simply because we graduated from the university. And I think this is one of the challenges we have as a country, where our pay systems have been socialized, and I think it is wrong to do that. But that's not, well, maybe that's another conversation, but I'm just saying that if the wage bill was based on a productive sense of value, I don't think this conversations about minimum wage may probably have an impact. But as it is, the minimum wage is so devalued, is demented, and by the time it will take it to come to fruition in January 2023, that value would have probably been worth just about 7 cedis.
I see. Let me come to Titus. You are in government. I don't know about the spoils of war, but
I'm in government.
Of course you are, and you speak for the ruling party. I mean, the 14.88. How commensurate is that with the current economic situation? Comes to about less than 300 cedis a month if you take away the weekends. Who really survives on that? And to say that to be basis that government can pay, then that really is a problem.
Salom, throughout history, unions will tell you that whatever government pays will not suffice. When the tripartite or social partners meet at the table to negotiate for the minimum wage, at the end of the day, they will tell you it's not about nothing. But notwithstanding that, minimum wage has always been the guide, the basics that no employer should pay below that, you know. But most public sector workers are paid above the minimum wage. It is only the enforceability of the minimum wage in the private sector that we have found wanting. That we don't seem to have a way of checking whether people are paying at the private level, they are paying close to the minimum level, minimum wage as have been agreed by the tripartite. Do you understand? So clearly we need to have a mechanism to find out whether these employers in the private sector are conforming to the payment of minimum wage. Basically, that is what we need to do. Then comes to the issue about public sector workers. Yesterday I was watching TV3 the news where TUTAC, Technical University Teachers,
declared strike.
They wanted to hit the streets again, that they want to compel government to come back to table and start negotiating on their conditions of service and all that. And it's not only them alone, other public sector workers will also join. The situation in which we find ourselves is not the best. How do we raise revenue? There has been a very big problem on our heads.
Raise revenue from the same old sources.
What I'm saying is that, and this is an area government was trying to diversify to find out, and my good friends, as best as we know them, how they hit hard on us.
But it's from the same people.
You know, so we're trying to raise other sources of this revenue. Unfortunately for us, we also suffered what they did to us. And they are even jubilating on the fact that government could still not succeed.
No, because it saves people some money.
You know, you understand. So
do
clearly,
you think government in its approach, government itself is reflecting what it wants people to do or see? You know, is government cutting back? We see, what's the name? Convoys. We see profligacy. You know, government is not reflecting what it wants the people to do or to reflect. Tighten your belt. But government doesn't appear to be tightening its belt.
One thing that I'll come back to that, in terms of the profligacy that you're talking about, the large convoys and all kinds of things. One area that could have helped us when it came to the issue about the yield levy was about the percentage level. And some school of thought was that
it should have been lower.
It should have been lower. Then progressively,
in fact, you started from 2, and it was quite a tussle to reduce it to 1.5.
Progressively, we could have increased it gradually and get to a point. But at the point, was it 1.5?
No, I think 1.75.
1.75.
1.75, yes.
Then later came to 1.5.
1.5. So it is 1.5 today.
1.5 today. So some thought that we could have pegged it at a very lower percentage, then gradually we could come up. But by and large, this is what we found.
So do you think that in this budget we are here to receive or to hear, there could be some adjustment to that rate? Is this something government is likely to do?
If you see, my grandmother tells me that if a Lagosian woman and a Ghanaian woman are selling a particular product in Makola, where the negotiation woman looks at a margin very small, the turnover is very faster. But the Ghanaian woman, the Makola woman, would like to peg the margin at a very high rates, and by so doing, your turnover is very slow. So if we can reduce it a bit, so that people be ready to pay, that will go faster, so that we can bring in more the revenue that we're talking about. So when you peg it at a higher level, the opportunity for people to contribute is so slow. So clearly, I am looking at revenue generation, because whatever it is, improving condition of service goes with revenue. Government need to raise revenue to look at its capex and look at government sector workers, how we can pay them.
Very well.
So the affordability is also important. You are going to negotiate table, you need to tell your people, your partners that you are negotiating with, this is what I have. You don't need to cheat anybody. I have been collective bargaining agreement for all this while. So you need to let your partners know what you have in your hand. And the situation in which we find ourselves, I think that we need to be careful.
Honorable, things are tough. Public sector workers or government workers generally must also contribute to us getting out of this hole.
You know, sometimes it's very interesting listening to my friends and brothers in the NPP. So Title starts by blaming the minority and making reference to so-called jubilation over the failure of e-levy, then admits that, you know, the rate could have been lower. So what did the minority do wrong? That's what the minority simply asks for. That's what we ask for, which the intransigence and the incompetence and the cluelessness of the people in charge did not tolerate and accept. So what did we do? Because you admit that, well, it would have been lower. The rate could have been lower. So what did we do wrong? If all we did was to ask for a better way.
Why did you jubilate?
I'm saying suppose jubilation. I don't know where that jubilation came from. Or the jubilation they keep referring to, I don't know where it is, but they have put it in their minds that we jubilated. I mean, so I'm just saying that sometimes when you listen to them, you don't know how to convince them, because it seems facts convince them when they make up their minds. It was just like listening to the finance minister yesterday when he was asked about the fact that the whole world suffered COVID. The whole world is suffering as a result of the Russia-Ukrainian war. Yet our inflation is over 45%, unlike our neighbors. And then he insists, I didn't know part of the world. Yes, and he insists that it is not as a result of their incompetent or poor management, that it is still Ukrainian war. So you don't know how to wrap your head around some of the positions that they adopt and advance strongly. But on the issue of minimum wage, Salam, I think that it doesn't look like we have hit bottom yet as a country, and that for me is scary. It looks like we are still falling. Unfortunately, when you listen, like we listened to the finance minister yesterday, you don't even get the impression that there is a certain level of appreciation of how dire things have become. For example, the agric minister touts his achievements and knocks his chest because he's able to sell a bunch of plantain at the ministry for lower than the price that it is sold at Malata Market or Medina or Techima Market or Tamale Market. Really, is that the solution to the high cost of food, you know, from our markets? Selling it at the ministry?
That's a pilot.
That's the solution?
That's a pilot.
No, I mean, listen to them, and you don't get that impression that this is a pilot. Look, the minister was in Parliament. I specifically asked him the role that he thinks buffer stock and others should be or could be playing at this time to regulate the prices of foodstuffs as they are at the farm gates and the market. And he simply suggested that a buffer stock is for school feeding. I mean, what was the notion behind the creation of buffer stock? Was it not to regulate prices, especially in times like this? So when you listen to the managers of the economy, unfortunately, they don't seem to appreciate how dire things have become. Minimum wage of 14.88 Ghana cedis to take effect in January. Salom, what that means is that today, You will need, not today, not today. In fact, in January, you will need to work about 5 days. 5 days to be able to buy a gallon of petrol.
In fact, last year it was 12 point something, and that was like $2.
Yes.
But with this, it's actually $1, which means that we are worse off.
You are worse off. So you have to work 5 days to buy a gallon. A gallon that may not be able to take you to work and back the same day. 5 days if you are on a minimum wage. You will need to work about 7 days. 7 days to be able to buy a bag of cement. A bag of cement. You need to work about 7 days to be able to buy a bag of cement.
I see.
Salom, and you are talking about a minimum wage of 14.88 Ghana cedis at a time that water and electricity prices have gone up by between 21 to 27%. Inflation is over 45%.
40%.
40.7%, sorry.
4.4, actually. Okay.
I mean, you are talking about exchange rate that has moved from about 4 cedis to about 14 cedis. And you listen to them and you wonder if they appreciate what the average Ghanaian is going through.
That's very depressing,
today.
Honorable. But let me give you some more depressing news.
Ideal milk. Ideal milk. If you want to feed your family on ideal milk, at least one tin a day. Today it is sold between 140, the 24, what do you call it, tins. That is in a pack of 160 grams. Between 140 to 170 Ghana cedis. That's almost half of your minimum wage.
Very well. Let me make some sad announcements. Honorable said quite depressing things. But let me conclude on this rather sad one. The breaking news is that former finance minister, Dr. Kwesi Botwe, has died.
Great man.
Former finance minister, Dr. Kwesi Botwe, has died. He died this morning, and sources close to the family have confirmed this to City News. And he reportedly passed on today at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, where he was seeking medical care. Dr. Botwe is said to have been receiving medical attention at the hospital in the last few days. He was born on 3rd September 1944, and he died at age 78. He's been Ghana's longest serving finance minister. I think he served under Rawlings for about 9 years, and that makes him the longest serving finance minister. I'm not sure Kenofurata can come close to that, because the most he could get would be 8 years at least, unless he's reappointed in another regime. All right, so on that sad note, I wish I could take comments from my guests, but our time is up.
My deepest condolences to the family of Dr. Kwesi. Great loss to Ghana, great loss to the NDC, and we stand in mourning with the family.
Okay, Honorable.
Great loss. I equally associate myself to Sohini and the NDC and the Nicholas family. He was such a great mind that have really shaped the cause of this country. My condolences. But unfortunately, we never had time to talk about this and that stuff.
Yes.
And I think that it's
really
principle.
That has been
what is going on.
We need just be careful about
what
the
I'm saying is that,
and all of that.
I had an experience when I was a deputy minister.
Okay. All right.
I had an experience.
I know you are also extending your condolences to the family.
I will have fallen in their trap.
This is how we conclude today's edition of the program. My name is Solomon. Thanks so much to my guests, and thanks to you also for doing the listening and the viewing. We'll be back again some other time.
Will your anchor hold in the storms of life? when the clouds unfold their wings of strife, when the strong tides lift and the cables strain, will your anchor drift off and remain? 'Cause we got an anchor, come on, lift your voice and sing, that keeps the soul steadfast and sure while the billows roll. Oh, come on. Fasting to the rock, which cannot move, grounded firm and deep in the Savior's. Wherever you are under the influence of my voice, beloved, put your hands together and make some noise. You may be seated in high places. Today's message is titled, "And Ken Slept in the Midst of the Storm." And Ken slept in the midst of the storm. Turn to your neighbor on the left and ask, neighbor. No, tell your neighbor, neighbor, and Ken slept in the midst of the storm. Turn to your neighbor on the right and ask, neighbor, can you sleep? Can you sleep in the midst of your storm? Well, so my exegesis will lean heavily on present unfolding events with relevant materials from the recent past. I will tell you what a storm is, what types of storms there are, and how you can sleep in your storm. Our character study clearly from our topic for today. Can you guess? Excellent. Kendo Foriata is a one-time finance minister in a country called Umofia. Now bow down your head and wish me well.
Is it the guideline of the IMF that should be used at all levels? Mr. Chairman, you want the yes or no answer? Let me answer this question before. Mr. Chairman, let me comment. The chairman decided for you to the minority leader. He can't yield to you. Yes, Chairman. You taking it to yourself. You yield it to yourself. Honorable, I'm going to have to take it. Thank you.
My name is Nadede. If you are looking for quality and authentic mobile phones and accessories, look no further than Franco Trading Enterprise. Franco Trading Enterprise deals in products such as iPhones, Samsung, Nokia, and all kinds of phones. We have accessories like hard drive, Bluetooth speakers, pen drive, and all kinds of phone accessories. We also deal in all brands of laptops. We are open for wholesales and retails. Franco Trading Enterprise, the home of quality mobile phones and accessories.
Franco Trading Enterprise, we have branches all over Ghana. You can also download Franco Trading app on Google Play Store.
Ghana Fue! Yay! Fido Asisemo! My people! Fido transform Gemma app.
The new Fido app is pink and much more. Yes, your loans got quicker, simpler, and friendlier.
And your loans in Kwa, ya add Fido score. Ya de Puma unya besia kesiye. Any insihu kakra bipe. Entifa wo Android phone. Na install it Fido app every Google Play Store. Sisia.
Anna dial it *711*5555 hash.
Channel Sosa Comfortos. Fido any agent bia. Uncheska ansia ma obesia. Ekwanya befa so enya loan. And say ube download the app no ewo Google Play Store. Fido. Fido. Endless opportunities.
Welcome to today's service of Backpage. We are live on City TV and streaming on Facebook. Do well to share the link. Invite your family and friends to join our fellowship today. If you haven't shared the link, you haven't done well. My name is Caleb Kuda, and Ken slept in the midst of the storm. Now, let's examine the word storm, okay? Let's examine the word storm. It has German origins, and it was used, when used as a noun, a storm is a violent disturbance of the atmosphere with strong winds, and usually it comes with rains, thunder, lightning, and so on. So when you hear tornadoes, hurricanes, cyclones, typhoons, yeah, that's the sort of picture. You have a storm. Russia-Ukraine war has suffered a storm in the hands of some government communicators in an attempt to explain away the mismanagement that has negatively impacted all Ghanaians. I believe scientists are still investigating why many typhoons or hurricanes are actually named after women, especially short women. It's intriguing, isn't it? But that's not the focus for today's message. And Ken slept in the midst of the storm. Also, a storm is a tumultuous. Now, that word tumultuous reminds me of my friend from Tumu. Tumultuous. Okay. A storm is a tumultuous reaction, an uproar, or controversy. So, for example, the book Working with Rollins caused a storm in Umuofia. I'm sure you can think of other examples. Now, the reaction was tumultuous. That was a storm. There was a storm over there. And Ken slept in the midst of the storm. When used as a verb, we're talking about to move angrily or forcefully in a specified direction. So, for example, Umuofia youth booed their leader and he stormed off the stage. That's an example. Or civil servants stormed their Greek ministry, rushing for readily available foodstuff, suddenly made cheap for a select few. That's to storm, okay? Now, of troops, we're saying as to storm is to suddenly attack and capture a building or any other place by means of force. So, for example, you could say a team of heavily built men, okay, stormed a media house and chased an innocent slender prostitute. Now, when used more loosely, we can say afflicted by apparent food inflation in the face of abundant food, desperate civil servants abandoned their work and stormed their Greek ministry for a flash-in-the-pan 9-day wonder attempt to supply cheap food. You stormed the place, and Ken slept in the midst of the storm. Beloved, we all know what it means to sleep. Sleep asleep. As a great Ghanaian couple once exchanged, sleep is when your mind and body are in a sedentary state. You are inactive. Amloigné, wada. Tu dors, je dors, nous avons dors. Beloved, it takes the supernatural to sleep in a storm. It's not normal to sleep in a storm, but Ken slept in the midst of the storm. Storms like this one.
We have made our grave concern to the president through the parliamentary leadership and the leadership of the party without any positive response. We are by this medium communicating our strong desire that the president change the Minister of Finance and the Minister of State in the Finance Ministry without further delay in order to restore hope into the financial sector and reverse the downward trend in the growth of the economy. The summary of our concerns leads to a plea that the Minister of Finance, Honorable Kenneth Ufuriata, and the Minister of State of the Ministry of Finance, Honorable Charles Edubuahi, be removed from office.
It's unusual, it's an error, it's an anomaly. For a group of like minds in a politically polarized atmosphere to come together and demand the crucifixion of one of their own lead money man over concerns of poor management of the economy. Now that's a violent disturbance of the atmosphere. But that kind of a storm is a tumultuous reaction to an economically emaciating storm.
Papa, my short petrol. Anything you piano, your short petrol. What's your petrol saying? My short petrol, 1 gallon 51. I'm going to be my short petrol. Nigeria petrol, 1 gallon 20 Ghana cedis. All the recurrent bomb nebianto. I'm just as I'm coming far. I'm to the petrol say I want to Nigeria petrol 20 Ghana 51 Ghana cedis. Now we come back to Ukraine. Yeah, Ukraine. Ukraine, yeah. And I Ukraine. Yeah, short the petrol.
The kind of storm I'm talking about is the one that gives people's investments low fates, backbush, mohawk, and all kinds of haircuts in a very painful manner. That's a storm.
Thank you for just a quick question to clarify. At this point on haircuts, are you saying that there will be no principal haircuts, because it's not really a term of art. Some people make use of the word haircut in reference to interest rate that is due somebody on their bond. Some people even talk about the tenor or when you will be paid. So when the president says there will be no haircuts, is he speaking in relation to the principal, or is he talking about the interest or the time? Just for that clarity's sake.
My understanding is that no principals will be touched. No principals will have a haircut. That's my understanding.
The kind of storm that makes young people throw caution to the wind and begin to boo their leaders in an unprecedented manner. That's a storm.
Yes, you know, Bagana, ne.
Fantastic festival, and we are so happy to be part of it. Once again, I'd like to thank Otu for Offshore.